Chapter 172. The sky was already bright. Whether it was in the game or in real life, it was still early in the morning. A gentle breeze caressed his face, and a few pieces of paper flew against the current like paper kites, slowly floating over his head, swaying back and forth. Unfortunately, Upstream's mood was not as energetic as the sun at 7 or 8 o'clock in the morning. He waved his hand, and a small fireball flew out, burning the few pieces of paper floating in the wind into ashes. The sun had risen. Upstream's investigation of a certain sorcerer was fruitless, and he was in a bad mood. Apart from that, he also asked around about this woman named Shi Xiaotian through the guild members. In the end, he found out quite a bit about this woman. She seemed to be a very famous person in the trading world. It was said that the price she quoted was neither too high nor too low. She had the air of a price vein in Cloud City. A professional merchant? Upstream frowned. He had always hated this kind of person. He felt that as a gamer, it was shameful to think about doing business all day instead of leveling up and farming. Upstream never recognized the value of this kind of person. I'd rather die than let this kind of person earn 1,000 gold coins, Upstream thought to himself. At the same time, he was a little worried because of Unchung Matsu. If Shi Xiaoan approached Unchung Matsu, perhaps this guy would buy it. Back in the tavern, Unchung Matsu did not leave resolutely enough. Unchung Matsu was still online in his friend list. Upstream sent him a message. "What are you doing?" "Just finished PvP, getting ready to go offline." Unchung Matsu let out a long sigh. "Do you have any clues?" Upstream asked. "I'm going to talk about it during the day." "There are indeed not many people who pull all-nighters," Unchung Matsu replied. "Did the woman in the tavern look for you again?" Against the current was not in the mood to beat around the bush, so he got straight to the point. Unchung Matsu said, "You're still thinking about her? Are you crazy? 1,000 gold coins? I'm willing to fork out 100 gold coins to look for that reborn amethyst chick. I don't believe that there's no one who's greedy for money. They're just asking for his name. We don't even know if we can poach him. Do they have to be so cautious?" "Yes, you're right," Upstream replied. This was also one of the methods he had thought of. "Let's not talk anymore, I'm too tired. I'm going offline." Moody in the Cloud replied with the last message and left the game. Against the Current was also very tired at this time, so he immediately made an announcement in the guild channel, reminding those who were online during the day to remember to continue this task. Anyone who found out about this information would also be rewarded by the guild. After making the necessary arrangements, I went against the current and headed towards the nearest safe zone, the Mage Academy, with a few of my friends. Just as they were about to arrive, someone behind them suddenly shouted, "Wanted mission! If there's nothing else, get out of here." Countercurrent was taken aback. Indeed, he had PK points on him. Although he wasn't as crazy as Unchung Matsu, there were still some shameless people that he couldn't tolerate, so he killed them. At night, Countercurrent's PK points had also reached 6 points. He even specifically reminded Unchung Matsu, who was crazily clearing PK points, not to accept him. However, he didn't expect that there would still be people who wanted to clear PK points on him. This didn't make sense. Other than an accident like Unchung Matsu, who would accept a quest with PK points as high as 6 points. It was currently 5 o'clock, and it was probably not far from 4 o'clock. Countercurrent and the others slowly turned around, looking at the unscientific guy behind them, and tears instantly welled up in his eyes. I've been searching for him in the crowd for 1,000 times, but when I look back, he's right behind me. Agitated, Countercurrent pointed at the person, you, for a long time, but he couldn't say a word. The person standing behind him was indeed Gu Fei. As a physical education teacher, most of the time, there were no classes in the morning, but normally, Gu Fei wouldn't use his working hours to play games. It was just that after the 2 matches last night, Gu Fei had reached level 40, so he wanted to complete the class advancement quest so that he could study it in actual combat during the match at night. That was why he hurried back to the game after his morning exercise. After he went online, he headed towards the Mage Academy from the offline safe zone. On the way, he happened to pass by the wanted quest. It was probably because he had been here for more than a month to accept quests repeatedly that he had gotten used to it. When he passed by this place, he turned into the quest publishing hall and scanned through the Cloud City's wanted list. He found a fat sheep with 5 PK points. This was relatively rare in Cloud City, so of course, Gu Fei happily accepted it. It was only after he left the hall that he realized that the quest had already been accepted. Gu Fei's wanted experience was incomparably rich. After looking at the coordinates, he knew that it was in the city. He immediately decided to complete this wanted quest first. Yutian Shenming had completed 100 wanted quests and received the Windchaser emblem. Naturally, he returned Gu Fei's one. At this time, the coordinates were refreshed every minute. After a few minutes, Gu Fei had already determined the direction that the person was heading towards, Mage Academy. Gu Fei was very pleased. He could just kill him and then complete the class advancement quest. It was really convenient. After that, he continued on his way to the Mage Academy. After passing through an alley, he saw a wanted target in front of him. He immediately issued his trademark warning, "Wanted mission, if there's nothing to do, get out of here." After that, he saw the other person turn around, looking very excited. One of them pointed at him and kept saying, "You." Gu Fei immediately followed up, "That's right, it's you. Everyone else, move aside." As he spoke, he was afraid that the person would run away, so he chased a few steps forward. At this time, he recognized that the person looked familiar. After thinking for a moment, he said, "Oh, it's you, the guild leader of Singing to Wine." "Ah, that's right, it's me. We've met before." Against the Current was very pleased. The other person still recognized him, so it was much easier to talk to him. In the end, Gu Fei rubbed his hands excitedly. "It's an expert. This is exciting." After saying that, he reached into his pocket and pulled out the night streamer. He looked at the others beside Against the Current and said, "Are you guys going to make a move?" The few of them looked at each other, then at Against the Current. "Wait." Against the Current hurriedly shouted, "Actually, we've been looking for you all night." Gu Fei casually waved his hand and caught a piece of paper that flew through the air. He held it in front of his eyes and read aloud, "Looking for a male mage player in the Reborn Amethyst Guild. If you know his whereabouts, please contact me. There will be a heavy reward." This is from you guys, right?" Against the Current shook his head, "Not that one." As he said that, he tapped the ground with his foot and pointed at the palm-sized advertisement pasted on the stone pavement. "That one is. Thank you for your hard work." Gu Fei said sincerely. He had seen quite a few advertisements along the way, so he could imagine that the workload was quite heavy. If not for the fact that he was in a hurry, he would have contacted the person written on the advertisement. "Not at all, it's worth it." Against the Current was still being humble. Gu Fei took 2 steps forward and tilted his head to look at the advertisement on the ground. "It also says that there will be a heavy reward. How much is this? Now that I've personally come to your doorstep, shouldn't it be doubled or something?" Against the Current was startled for a moment, then immediately said, "Of course. Name your price." In order to recruit this powerful person, Against the Current decided to use every means possible to curry favor with him. Even if it was 1,000 gold coins, giving it directly to this person was still much better than giving it to Xiaotian, right? Even if he failed to recruit him in the end, it would still be good news. Who would have thought that Gu Fei would only laugh, "Name your price, I was just joking." As he said that, he waved his hand and a purplish-black sword light flashed. "Come." Gu Fei stood there with rapt attention. "What for?" Against the Current was startled. "A bounty quest, my target is you." Gu Fei said. After all this time, he had wasted his time trying to get close to him. Against the Current almost fainted, saying, "Don't be in such a hurry, listen to what I'm looking for you for." "I know what it is, I'll join your guild." "No need, my current guild is pretty good." Gu Fei said. That day when Against the Current brought people to the tavern to ask about Gu Fei, he was in the private room next to them. Of course he knew why Against the Current was looking for him. Against the Current knew that things wouldn't go so smoothly. Even from the perspective of a normal player, A male player infiltrating a purely female guild was something that many people dreamed of. From this perspective, Gu Fei had already reached the pinnacle of his guild career. No matter how big the guild was, it wouldn't be able to shake his determination. Unless it was a purely female guild with even more beautiful women. Reborn Amethyst. What's the point of a small guild like this? Against the Current tried to change Gu Fei's perception from the perspective of values. It's not that interesting. Gu Fei nodded in agreement. That's why you should come to our big guild. Against the Current was overjoyed. Could it be that he was so talented that he could change the minds of others with just a few words? No matter how big the guild is, it's not that interesting. Gu Fei said. Against the Current realized that he was thinking too highly of himself. Then what's interesting? Gu Fei waved the sword in his hand. Come. Against the Current frowned, immediately coming to a conclusion about Gu Fei. PvP maniac. This kind of talent shouldn't be kept in a female guild. Against the Current's eagerness grew. Looking at Gu Fei's eagerness, he suddenly had an idea. In that case, let's make a bet. Let's fight one-on-one. If you lose, you'll join my guild. If I win, you'll go to jail. There won't be any other punishment. Gu Fei said. If you win, I'll give you this staff, Countercurrent said as he pulled out his aqua blue staff. Chapter 173. Gu Fei didn't say anything else. It wasn't that he wanted Upstream's staff, but if he placed a higher bet, this person would be more serious in the fight. That would be more meaningful. Thinking of this, he waved his sword and said, Don't go easy on me. It doesn't matter if you die, I will keep my promise. Gu Fei knew very well that going easy on him would greatly affect his strength. Against the Current, he smiled and said, Come. There weren't many informants in the morning, and the streets were deserted. Upstream's companions retreated to the side and waited for the two of them to make their move. Gu Fei took a deep breath and his expression turned serious. Upstream was ranked 9th on the sorcerer ranking. He was a top-tier sorcerer in the parallel world. Gu Fei didn't dare to underestimate these experts in the game. In many aspects, Gu Fei couldn't compare to them. The staff in Upstream's hand was very eye-catching, and it was obviously an exquisite item. This person's magic damage was probably at the level of being able to kill instantly. Fireball shoot! Gu Fei was the first to attack. He cast a fireball and chased after it. Fireball shoot! Upstream also cast a fireball, and then the staff in his hand slammed on the ground. Frozen ice path, go! The ground made a bow sound, followed by the continuous sound of footsteps that sounded like people walking on snow. A layer of ice that was more than a meter wide formed on the ground, and it spread toward Gu Fei's feet. Gu Fei had never seen such a strange scene before. He was stunned, but he quickly took 2 steps to the side. The path paved with crushed ice covered the spot where Gu Fei had just landed, sparkling and translucent as the morning sun shone upon it. What is this? Gu Fei asked curiously as he flicked away the fireball in front of him. Hee, it's a skill learned from a scroll. Fireball shoot. Upstream replied as he completed his chant. A fireball ignited between his fingers, and it blocked the fireball that Gu Fei shot. The 2 fireballs collided and shattered into sparks. Not simple! Gu Fei exclaimed. The technique and eyesight required to steadily summon a fireball to block the opponent's fireball was even more difficult than directly swinging a sword to deflect the fireball. Excuse me, Countercurrent said humbly as he poked the ground with his staff again. Frozen path, let's go! Another wave of crushed ice came flying over. Gu Fei dodged to the side disapprovingly and said with a smile, This move is quite nice, but it's too slow. How can it hit me? Ice tornado. Swirl. This time, Countercurrent didn't say anything. After chanting, he unleashed an ice tornado. Gu Fei moved his body sideways in an attempt to dodge, but the ice whirlwind clearly changed direction towards Gu Fei's direction. With this skill, the caster could control its movement for a certain period of time at the cost of continuous mana consumption. The ice whirlwind wasn't slow, and its movement speed was only slightly faster than superhuman slender waist dance. Naturally, Gu Fei, who was slightly slower than Slender Waist Dance, couldn't catch up. Moreover, Countercurrent's remote control skill was quite good. During the match that day, he had controlled an ice whirlwind to block Slender Waist Dance, which was faster than him. Now, controlling it to hit Gu Fei wasn't a difficult task. Seeing that he couldn't dodge it, Gu Fei made a prompt decision. He shouted Dual Flame Flash and met the attack head-on. Relying on his high proficiency in the Dual Flame Flash, he dispersed the ice tornado. Countercurrent didn't panic. He waved his hand and unleashed another ice whirlwind. Gu Fei cursed inwardly. His lack of mana was a big problem. At most, he could only use Dual Flame Flash 4 times. Countercurrent seemed to have seen through this, so he wanted to exhaust Gu Fei's mana. While he was thinking, the ice whirlwind had already arrived in front of him. Gu Fei helplessly unleashed another Dual Flame Flash to deal with it, but then quickly pointed his sword and said, "Heaven's Descent Wheel of Fire, descend." "Hee, your spell's delay is very long, don't you know?" Countercurrent laughed. "Of course I know." Gu Fei said. "Also, you can't trick me. With this spell of yours, I don't even need to move. But it's better to take 2 more steps forward. It's safer." Going against the current said as he leisurely took 2 steps forward. Then, flames appeared in the sky behind him, and a ring of fire descended from the sky. Countercurrent glanced back and laughed. Sure enough, those 2 steps were unnecessary. "You're quite accurate with your spells. You really are an expert." Gu Fei was also shocked. With his spell's delay, if he were to attack someone with a spell, they would have enough time to run away. So he had to calculate his opponent's direction and then launch a deceptive attack. The attack just now was because he thought that if he went against the current, he might be able to take advantage of the situation to pull away from Gu Fei. That was why he threw the Heaven's Descent flame wheel behind him, hoping to hit him head-on. However, he didn't expect him to see through it. This was also very helpless. Gu Fei completely relied on guessing to predict the attack, but Countercurrent didn't. When casting a spell, during the chanting process, the hand or the weapon in the hand had to be pointed at the target. An experienced mage like Countercurrent had already determined the location of the Heaven's Descent Wheel of Fire from Gu Fei's Dark Streak Sword. Using the terminology that Gu Fei had come across since he started practicing martial arts, Countercurrent's eyes were fast, but Gu Fei's hands were too slow, so naturally he couldn't hit him at all. Ice Whirlwind, spin. Countercurrent once again summoned an ice whirlwind. But this time, Gu Fei was prepared, and he dashed out horizontally. He could only cast Dual Flame Flash again. Even if he could hit it this time, he wouldn't be able to hit it again. Therefore, he could only dodge and try to get close to upstream before the ice whirlwind caught up to him. Or, when the ice whirlwind caught up to him, he could use a Dual Flame Flash to kill both upstream and the ice whirlwind. Thinking like this, Gu Fei's body moved quickly. He took a few steps diagonally, but this was the frigid path that Countercurrent had used before. The first one had already disappeared, but the second one was still there. Gu Fei didn't dare to step on it, so he lightly jumped over it. At the same time, he suddenly heard Countercurrent chant again, "Frigid path, go." There was the same bow sound, but the speed was different. This time, the frigid path had already helped Gu Fei set up a foothold. Gu Fei took large strides, trying not to let his feet touch the ice, but he was still a step too slow. Creak, creak. Gu Fei steadily stepped on the frigid path. Suddenly, a chill rose from the soles of his feet, and he lost all feeling in his legs. He wanted to take a step, but he didn't have the strength to do so, so he slowly moved half an inch. Just as upstream was about to say a few pleasantries, he suddenly saw Gu Fei put his sword back into his pocket, took off his dark moon spiritual robe, and pointed at the ground with his other hand as he muttered something. "Hey, what are you doing?" Countercurrent was startled. The frigid path had frozen Gu Fei. He felt that victory and defeat had been decided, but he was confused by Gu Fei's strange actions. Gu Fei smiled slightly. "I'm chanting." "Ah." Countercurrent didn't react in time. Suddenly, flames rose from Gu Fei's feet and engulfed him. Self-immolation? This guy wants to say that he committed suicide, so he didn't lose to me? Isn't he being shameless? As Countercurrent was thinking, he suddenly saw Gu Fei rushing out of the flames. He was instantly dumbfounded. Gu Fei's speed had obviously recovered, but the freezing effect shouldn't have been so short. Could it be that the 1,000 layers flames had removed the freezing effect? Logically speaking, fire was hot, so removing the freezing effect was reasonable. But Countercurrent didn't know if there was such a setting in the game. Even if there was, not many people would mess around like this. If he was hit by the freezing effect, then he would definitely suffer some damage. If he was hit by the fire 3,000 layers flames, then wouldn't he really be burnt to ashes? Using a small fireball to warm his hands was still reasonable. Although Countercurrent thought this way, the reality was that not only did Gu Fei's 1,000 layers flames remove the freezing effect, the ice whirlwind that chased him also disappeared in the flames. There really is someone messing around like this. Countercurrent didn't know whether to laugh or cry. Gu Fei had already arrived in front of him. Countercurrent didn't panic and said indifferently, "You've already lost." What? Gu Fei was startled. "Do you still have mana?" Countercurrent smiled. 2 double flame flashes, 1 heavenly fire wheel, and 1 blazing 3,000 layers flames. He had even thrown a small fireball earlier. Judging from Gu Fei's actions during the Celestial Guild Assembly, going against the current must have exhausted his mana. Gu Fei smiled faintly. "I can't beat you in terms of spells because that's not my strong suit." After saying that, he took out the baptism of fire from his pocket and slashed at Countercurrent. Countercurrent was shocked. He didn't expect this mage to be so strong. He even had a knife hidden on him. Even without mana, he was fighting in melee. He really didn't have the demeanor of a mage at all. Just as he was thinking this, the knife was already slashing at his head. Countercurrent's reaction speed wasn't slow, and he raised his staff to meet the attack. They didn't expect Gu Fei's slash to be a feint to bully amateurs like them. Seeing that Countercurrent's staff had been drawn in, Gu Fei immediately retracted his sword and changed his move, slashing horizontally at Countercurrent's waist. Countercurrent was hit by the knife, but when he saw the damage, he relaxed. He was afraid that Gu Fei had some strange tricks up his sleeve. But when he saw the damage, he realized that melee really wasn't a mage's strong suit. Resist. Countercurrent was just about to summon a flame ring of resistance, but Gu Fei's second attack came unexpectedly fast. He only managed to say 2 words before the second attack landed on him. Not only was his chanting interrupted, but Gu Fei's blade also suddenly burned with a red light, and with a touch, it burned Upstream's body. Enchantment. Countercurrent was startled. This attack method was very popular for a time because a guy with the number 27,149 used this method to trample on a thief, which attracted a lot of attention. And this person was a mage, and his origin was Cloud City. Countercurrent finally lost his calm. Was this mage in front of him that guy? If that was the case, he could trample on thieves in melee. Perhaps it was as he said, he wasn't good at spells. "It's over." Countercurrent spat out these 2 words in his heart. He wanted to chant, but he was once again interrupted by Gu Fei's quick knife, and the enchantment was ignited again. The enchantment of a mage was not weak. Chapter 174. Gu Fei was fast, but his sword was even faster. One slash after another, Countercurrent's face was glowing red. He was still alive after so many slashes. One reason was that Gu Fei was unlucky today and didn't use many enchantments. 2. Countercurrent was PvP with a mage, so he used a lot of equipment that could absorb spell damage, which weakened the enchantments. Even so, it was only a matter of time before he died if he continued to endure the slashes. At first, Countercurrent's guild members thought that Gu Fei would be easily killed by Countercurrent if he got close. They didn't expect this to happen. Countercurrent was completely passive. Swimming against the current was completely passive. He wanted to chant but was repeatedly interrupted by Gu Fei. Every time he sang, it was all for naught. They looked at each other. Should they help? This was a problem. Countercurrent was the one who suggested the duel. Now that they saw that he was in a bad situation, they immediately helped him. This was no different from slapping Countercurrent's face. They hesitated for a moment and finally sighed. They didn't do anything to help, Gu Fei's sword technique was executed in one breath. He was completely immersed in it and slashed happily. Finally, he turned into a streak of white light and disappeared. Gu Fei's eyes were still filled with regret. 2 more strokes and he would have been able to use all 3 stances of the Tang Saber's 9 consecutive interrupting waves. What a pity! Gu Fei shook his head. He put the sword back into his pocket and looked at his health. It was so red that it was in the single digits. If he were to swim against the current, he would be able to kill Gu Fei with just a few strikes of his staff, let alone using magic. That was close. Gu Fei sighed. Fortunately, he was doing a bounty quest, so he was wearing the Windchaser emblem and not Eddie's emblem. Otherwise, with the additional 6 points of intelligence from Eddie's emblem and the slightly higher spell attack, Gu Fei wouldn't have the chance to rush out of the fire if his Cinder Tree Thousand Layers flames burned a few more HP. Gu Fei reviewed the PvP process and summarized the lessons learned. He took out a piece of bread from his pocket and ate it to replenish his health. Then, he looked at the few spectators who were drinking and singing by the side of the street. Although their expressions were rather absent-minded, it was clear that they had no intention of fighting with Gu Fei. What a good character! Gu Fei was disappointed. He really hoped that these people had bad character and would jump up to take revenge on him the moment they saw that they were killed because they went against the current. Are you guys all right? If there's nothing else, I'm leaving. Gu Fei was unwilling. The few of them shook their heads. Then I'll take my leave, Gu Fei said to the others. Wait, brother, what's your name? Someone asked. Qianli is drunk, Gu Fei replied. The man nodded. Then, they watched as Gu Fei left for the Mage Academy. It was early in the morning, so the academy was relatively deserted. Gu Fei went straight to the NPC teacher who usually taught mages. Seeing that Gu Fei was already level 40, the NPC teacher took the initiative to ask Gu Fei if he wanted to change his class. Naturally, Gu Fei said yes. As a result, the teacher quickly gave him the class advancement quest. Gu Fei, who was invincible in the PvP arena, was instantly stunned by this quest. The quest was simple, but it fully exposed the inner world of the game company. This quest could be summarized in one word: money. There was nothing to do but to pay a class change fee of 200 gold coins. This wasn't a lot of money, but it wasn't a small amount either. The main problem was that Gu Fei didn't have it. Gu Fei didn't have money. To be precise, he didn't have 200 gold coins. In total, Gu Fei only had 37 gold coins, 21 silver coins, and 78 copper coins. The first 2 mercenary deals had made Gu Fei rich for a while. It was because of those 2 deals that Gu Fei hadn't realized the problem of money until now. Otherwise, with his extravagant expenses of eating an apple for every 4 spells, he wouldn't have been able to last until today if he didn't focus on managing his wallet. Now, faced with the system's exorbitant demand for the class change quest, Gu Fei realized the insignificance of his wallet. After leaving the Mage Academy dejectedly, Gu Fei still had the wanted quest hanging on his neck. So, he activated the Windchaser emblem and sent himself back to the wanted quest hall. Quest complete, reward received. He had experience and money. Normally, this small amount of money was enough to satisfy Gu Fei. But now, with a mountain of 200 gold coins on his shoulders, Gu Fei suddenly realized how harsh the system was. I spent so much time killing a person and almost got myself killed, and all I got is this little bit of money. How inhumane! Gu Fei complained to another player who was choosing a quest. This person turned his head and looked at Gu Fei. Yeah, this quest is extremely risky, and the rewards aren't that great. The price-to-performance ratio is really low. No wonder it's so quiet, no one's doing this quest. Gu Fei looked around. The entire hall was empty except for him and the person in front of him. That's not it. The person in front of him said, "Did you know? There's a person in our city who loves doing these trash quests. He comes every day to do them." Have you seen him before? No, I heard it from someone else. I heard that he's a mage. He wears a black robe and his weapon is a sword. He seems pretty strong. You said that he's strong, but why is he so stupid as to do these trash quests? The person said as he accepted the quest and turned his head to look at Gu Fei. Now that he paid attention, he realized that the person in front of him was a mage. He was wearing a black robe. He then rummaged around in his pocket for a long time and pulled out a purple sword. He held it in front of him and asked, "Are you talking about this sword?" "No, of course not," the person said decisively. "Actually, bounty quests are also very meaningful. You see, I'm doing one right now, right? Alright, I've accepted the quest. I'll be leaving first." After saying this, the person immediately disappeared, leaving Gu Fei alone in the empty hall. Money. Where can I get money? After leaving the hall, Gu Fei was still troubled by this problem. Money was indeed a thing that affected harmony. At this moment, Gu Fei was even grumbling to the young master of the Han family. The mercenary group didn't even manage properly, and only did business twice. Thinking of business, Gu Fei suddenly had an idea. Ever since he killed monsters and leveled up, Gu Fei had obtained quite a few items. Because these common items were sold in the auction house, it was very easy to lose money. If he wanted to sell these items, he had to set up a stall and sell them himself. Now that Gu Fei was short on money, he had no choice but to become a merchant. Thinking about this, he went to the warehouse near the city gate and looked into his storage box. After a long time of accumulation, there were quite a lot of items. Fortunately, he had been doing bounty quests every day and had less time to kill monsters and level up. Otherwise, he wouldn't have enough storage boxes. Gu Fei took out a sack and put the items in the storage into it. Speaking of this sack, it had a long history. When Gu Fei was ranked second in efficiency, the items he obtained every day were counted by sacks. Later, because of a misunderstanding, he threw this sack to June Rain. Later, June Rain used it to carry food and drinks to Moonlit Night City. It wasn't until the tournament started that June Rain returned from Moonlit Night City and solemnly returned the sack to its owner. From this sack, Gu Fei could vaguely see the days when he worked hard to kill monsters. He was filled with emotion. Swiftly filling the sack and carrying it on his shoulder, Gu Fei staggered towards the trade street. Along the way, he excitedly calculated, 1 piece of equipment for 10 gold, 2 pieces for 20 gold, 20 pieces for 200 gold. At this time of the morning, every place in the game was very quiet, but there was one place that was an exception, and that was the second trade street. This street was formed after the official launch of the game. At that time, the players that occupied the second trade street were all veterans from the open beta. The quality of the goods in their hands was relatively high. For most of the new players, they could only lament their inadequacy due to the price. Therefore, the new players could only gradually form a market that suited them according to their own needs. This was the beginning of the second trade street. The second trade street developed very quickly because the new players were always full of enthusiasm. They were online for a long time every day, and their numbers were much higher than the open beta players. This caused the second trade street to be filled with people selling their goods at all times. Even after the birth of the third and fourth trade streets, only the second trade street continued with this enthusiasm. Players in Cloud City knew that the second trade street was the best place to do business at night or early in the morning when there were fewer people online. Only here was full of life at all times. Gu Fei had heard of the second trade street for a long time, but this was the first time he had set foot on it. Just like the rumors said, at this time of the day, the second trade street did not change at all. And because of this special time of the day, the players on the second trade street all had a special appearance. They all had a sleepy face. But upon closer inspection, the sleepy faces were also different. They were mainly divided into 2 groups. One group had sleepy eyes, but they were full of energy. This group was the type that just woke up and went to play. The other group had sleepy faces and didn't even have the energy to speak. This group was obviously the type that hadn't slept through the night. Gu Fei walked on the street, looking for a suitable space for his stall. Compared to normal players, Gu Fei's sack of goods was too much. A normal space wouldn't be able to accommodate him. After walking a quarter of the street, Gu Fei finally saw a relatively large empty space. He immediately took a step forward and put down the sack. With a crash, Gu Fei's goods were all over the empty space. There were even a few that were hopping and jumping to the middle of the road. Wow! Countless players' eyes were drawn over, especially the two on Gu Fei's left and right. Their eyeballs almost fell out of their sockets. Gu Fei's goods were piled up like a small mountain. The two stalls only had a few items. In comparison, their stalls were too small. Chapter 175. Hoarding large amounts of goods was something that merchants would only do in special times. For example, from the open beta to the official launch, a large number of players would enter the game and increase the demand for goods. The price would definitely rise. Many people would seize this opportunity to hoard equipment at low prices during the open beta and sell them at high prices after the official launch. This was a successful example. But in reality, it wasn't that simple. A large number of players entering the market would only cause the price to rise for a short period of time. After all, in the game, every player was the number one consumer and the number one producer. It was just that the high-level players were the advanced producers, while the low-level players were lagging behind. However, the advanced equipment produced by the advanced producers wasn't cheap. Not everyone had the ability to hoard large amounts of equipment and sell them. Most merchants hoarded equipment for the middle class. As the new players leveled up, they would soon be able to obtain this equipment. Therefore, the price of this equipment would only rise for a short period of time. When a large number of new producers entered the market and the number of goods increased, even if the price didn't fall, it would still be difficult to sell them. Buy low and sell high. It sounded simple, but there was a lot of knowledge behind it. Only a small number of people were able to make money from these words. Otherwise, there wouldn't be more poor people than rich people. Take the business opportunity from the open beta, for example. Many people saw this opportunity, but a portion of them only knew the surface and didn't know the inside story. They weren't good at it and ended up hoarding too much equipment. The rule of the game, as time went on, the equipment in the early stages would become worthless. In stock terms, the price of this batch of equipment had already fallen below the issue price, and it was the type that was hard to sell. Although there were no more hoarders, there were still normal transactions in the market, and the competition was quite fierce. When Gu Fei tossed out this pile of equipment, those with a discerning eye immediately realized that most of the equipment belonged to the middle class. They immediately thought of Gu Fei as one of the failed merchants in the wave of reselling. Moreover, this person had actually held on to this rotten stock for a long time. It was truly a failure among failures. The group of people looked at Gu Fei happily without any sympathy. The new generation of players hated these reselling merchants for taking the opportunity to make money from them, while the old players envied them for taking the opportunity to make money. Hence, both sides felt disgusted by the failed reselling merchants. These two groups were all the players had, so now that Gu Fei, a suspected loser, had appeared, everyone's faces were filled with schadenfreude. Gu Fei didn't know what was going on. Seeing that he seemed to be getting a lot of attention, he was happy and felt that his business would definitely have a bright future. He then squatted down and carefully tidied up the equipment on the ground. Although the equipment in the parallel world did not have a level requirement, it was clear to see the different levels based on the attributes of the equipment. Based on the additional attributes, the value of a piece of equipment could be determined. Gu Fei's equipment was all blue equipment. Unless it was of a very high level, there was no market for white equipment. Blue equipment was the mainstream. Most players would start with a full set of blue equipment. Then, they would work hard to find a way to upgrade their equipment to gold equipment. As for purple equipment, it was completely non-mainstream. Most people wouldn't even reach that level and would only dream about it. Gu Fei quickly sorted out the different types of equipment. There were equipment on his head, equipment on his body, equipment in his hands, equipment on his neck, equipment on his fingers, equipment on his chest, and equipment on his feet. There were all kinds of equipment, filling up the space in front of Gu Fei. Gu Fei nodded in satisfaction. He wiped the sweat off his forehead and raised his head. Someone had been paying attention to Gu Fei's actions. Gu Fei immediately responded with a kind smile. Equipment, anyone want it? Everyone happily shook their heads. Gu Fei's smile was a bit stiff, so everyone was even happier. Putting aside the fact that Gu Fei's equipment was a bit outdated, these people didn't need it. Even if they did, they didn't want to buy Gu Fei's equipment. The trade street was so long, and Gu Fei's equipment was the most common stuff. He didn't have to worry about not being able to buy it elsewhere. Therefore, let's just let him die in our hands. Everyone had the same mentality, hissing as they dispersed. Many people were still enjoying it, looking back to admire Gu Fei's expression. Gu Fei was at a loss. Was it because his equipment was too outdated? Gu Fei also thought of this. Most of his equipment was obtained between level 20 and level 30. At the moment, it seemed to be relatively cheap equipment. But along the way, Gu Fei paid attention to other players' stalls. He often saw equipment of the same type, so he felt that there was a market for these things. But thinking that there would be very few people who would choose these equipment, he had to wait patiently. Thinking of this, Gu Fei was no longer anxious. He found a comfortable position to sit on the ground and began to wait patiently. On the trade street, the most common sound was naturally the sound of bargaining. Gu Fei quietly waited for customers to arrive, while listening to them learn about the market. As for the price of equipment, Gu Fei had never studied it before. Originally, he thought of a unified price, 10 gold per item, and earning 200 gold would be enough. But after paying attention to the situation of the surrounding stalls when they were bargaining, Gu Fei realized that he had overestimated the value of the items in his hands. Most of the expired products in his hands probably weren't even worth 10 gold. The stall diagonally across from him had a pair of shoes with better attributes than the ones in Gu Fei's stall, but the final transaction price was only 8 gold. Then he observed the other items that had been successfully sold. After comparing the attributes, Gu Fei finally realized that he had been blindly optimistic. Let's not talk about whether or not he could sell the goods in his hands. Even if he sold all of them, he might not even be able to gather 50 gold. If he wanted to gather 200 gold, he would have to make a few trips back and forth. Gu Fei's selling was the same as adding points to his character. Speed was what he pursued. He only hoped to save up 200 gold as soon as possible. He didn't care whether he made a profit or a loss. With this thought in mind, he simply raised his voice. $1 shop, each item only costs 1 gold. Low prices were always the most beautiful temptation in the market. As soon as Gu Fei shouted, countless players immediately rushed over. Even some of the players that had originally set up their stalls couldn't help but come over to take a look. Gu Fei was overjoyed. He calculated in his heart, 1 piece of equipment for 1 gold. 200 pieces of equipment should be able to gather 200 gold. Everything in my warehouse should be around this amount. As long as I make a few more trips, 200 gold won't be a problem. However, he didn't expect that he was blindly optimistic. The players that were called over by the $1 shop carefully looked at everything in Gu Fei's stall. Soon, most of them shook their heads and left. Cheap was indeed tempting, but if it was something that he didn't need, no matter how cheap it would be useless. Moreover, small fries like Gu Fei didn't have any value in buying low and selling high. A few of the players that came to take a look with this kind of mentality also left with flagging interest. In the end, there were still some players that stayed. They were all wearing beginner's clothes and were definitely newbies. Since the equipment didn't have a level requirement, it was very tempting for them to be able to wear equipment that was around level 20. However, as new players, their wallets were also very thin. They were more familiar with silver and copper coins. As long as the word gold was mentioned, it was a huge sum of money to them. Because of this, they stubbornly wanted to bargain with Gu Fei for 1 gold. Gu Fei unyieldingly said, "It's already cheap enough. I won't bargain." 3 of them left on the spot. The remaining 2 were very patient. They coaxed and pestered Gu Fei, calling him Big Brother countless times. In the end, they made a buy 3 get 1 free promotion for Gu Fei. Each of them spent 3 gold to get 4 pieces of equipment from Gu Fei and left in high spirits. He finally earned 6 gold. Gu Fei was very emotional. He took out his money bag and threw 6 gold into it. He lowered his head and counted again. Unfortunately, Gu Fei didn't have a small amount. At this time, his gold was 37 plus 6, 43. He still needed 157 gold to reach 200 gold. Are these all sold for 1 gold? While Gu Fei was counting, someone suddenly asked, Ah yes. Gu Fei answered and quickly raised his head. It's you! The two were startled at the same time. The one who came to Gu Fei's stall to ask about the price was actually Boundless. Gu Fei was just surprised to meet someone she knew. Boundless, in addition to this, had some doubts. The Gu Fei she knew was the person who helped her out outside of Cloud City. He was an expert who killed 6 people in an instant. In the game, experts often meant wealth. Even though it wasn't absolute, it wasn't to the extent of being poor. For Gu Fei to have to sell off such a pile of rubbish to earn gold coins after gold coins, this kind of desolation was too unexpected for Boundless. No matter what, with Gu Fei's current level, wouldn't it be faster to get a few high-level equipment and sell them than to sell off expired equipment for 1 gold? Boundless was indeed the most suitable way for Gu Fei to make money for Gu Fei. Everything in the game was linked to level. Having the highest level could be said to be the #1 productive force. The highest level equipment produced could be the best in the market. How many experts in the game had gotten rich this way? The parallel world equipment didn't have a level requirement. This made this way even more attractive. Unfortunately, because of the difficulty of leveling up, the level gap between players wasn't too wide. As a result, this way of making money wasn't in the hands of a few people. However, Gu Fei had a unique advantage, because he had the ability to kill monsters 20 levels higher than him. Chapter 176. Dazzling Mang was puzzled, but he didn't say anything. The game was a place full of capable people. Compared to Little Ray who lost money to open a tavern, Gu Fei's behavior was at least normal. Gu Fei, on the other hand, was momentarily surprised by the chance encounter. He quickly recovered his composure as a businessman and enthusiastically greeted the customer who took the initiative to come to him. What do you want? Thus, Dazzling Mang squatted down and carefully looked around. Gu Fei had nothing to do, so he used Identify on Dazzling Mang. Level 31, his equipment was extremely simple, and there were even gaps in his accessories. Even a new player at level 31 wouldn't have this kind of situation, not to mention that Dazzling Mang had once had a glorious level 30. Gu Fei was curious and couldn't help but ask, "How come you don't have any equipment?" Dazzling Mang was already picking and choosing from Gu Fei's stall. Hearing Gu Fei's words, he raised his head and looked at him. "I died of old age and died completely." "How many times have you died?" Gu Fei couldn't help but be curious. In the game, every time you died, you would drop a level. It wasn't easy to kill someone until they died naked, because once they reached level 10, they would have to be protected by PK. "I've been dead for more than a month, I don't know how many times." Dazzling Mang was indeed tough. His death wasn't counted by number, but by time. "Then you haven't reached level 10? Gu Fei was puzzled. Dazzling Mang looked at Gu Fei in surprise. "I can level up." "Level up and then get killed by them?" Gu Fei asked. "Do you think I'm afraid of them?" Dazzling Mang said. So this cleric, in a situation where he couldn't fight back, still stubbornly resisted, just to say, "I'm not afraid of you," in his heart? His personality was so unyielding that it was a bit extreme. Gu Fei couldn't help but sigh and finally asked, "Now they're not chasing you?" "They haven't come since last time. Maybe they're too lazy to come again, or maybe they're busy with the competition." Vast Mang said. "Oh." Gu Fei nodded. Boundless Mang lowered his head and said, "I still haven't thanked you for last time." "Thank you," Gu Fei reminded her. That day, Mang said, "Thank you," more than once. He looked haggard and humble. He didn't look as arrogant as he did in the moonlit night city. I mean at the entrance to the dungeon. "Thank you very much for telling me what you have heard." Boundless Mang said. "Nothing," Gu Fei said. "Did you wait for him?" No. Gu Fei was surprised. He had never heard of another exit to the dungeon. "Not long after you left, I also left," Mang said. "Oh. I clearly had a premonition, but I still chased after him to find out. Even an outsider like you already knew what was going on. Why should I lie to myself?" Mang said. Gu Fei didn't say anything. Gu Fei thought that telling her everything he knew was the limit of what a stranger could do. As for the final choice of feelings, Gu Fei didn't think he had any right to express his opinion. Although it was a game, it was clear that Mang Mang was more serious about her feelings. As for the silver moon, it was also a concept that a considerable number of gamers admired: games. Everything was a game. So, I should thank you properly, Mang Mang said. It was obvious that her gratitude for this matter was much greater than that of the day Gu Fei saved her from the hands of the 6 people. After all, from her perspective, she wasn't afraid of those people, nor was she afraid of dying, so whether or not she thanked him was just superficial. In this matter, Mang Mang accepted Gu Fei's kindness from the bottom of her heart. Gu Fei naturally didn't care so much, and only said lightly, "It's nothing. Let's add each other as friends." Mang Mang said generously. Gu Fei didn't care. He nodded and opened the friend button. Immediately, he received a system notification saying, "Mang Mang added you as a friend. When I have money, I'll treat you to a good drink. Looking at your name, you must like to drink a lot, right?" Mang Mang smiled bitterly. Gu Fei felt even more helpless. He couldn't be bothered to talk about the old story anymore, so he just casually replied, "There's no need." "You said you saw me in Moonlit Night City. When was that?" Mang Mang asked. "I was 27149. Gu Fei replied indifferently. But a badge that Mang Mang had just picked up fell to the ground. She suddenly raised her head to look at Gu Fei. Previously, she had been looking down and picking up things while talking. Before the two of them could say anything, the player at the stall next to Gu Fei let out a laugh. "Sorry, I didn't mean to listen to you." That person quickly apologized. "But Beauty, since you're from Moonlit Night City, you probably don't know, but the mages in Cloud City like to say that they're 27149 when they pick up girls," this person said while looking at Gu Fei with a smile. Gu Fei heard this and laughed. He had never heard of this before. He quickly asked with interest, "What about the results? How are their results?" That person sighed again and again. "There are countless casualties." But Gu Fei asked, 27149 is an expert. When the beauties heard this, they couldn't help but want to see it. If you want to pick up girls, you have to get close, right? You're a mage and you let them test your skills. How could you not die? That person laughed. "Ha, how pitiful." Gu Fei also laughed. But Boundless Mang didn't care about this. She knew that Gu Fei wasn't using this boring method to pick up girls. Since he said this, then he really was 27,149. "How about it? Do you still want to buy me a drink?" Gu Fei finished laughing and turned his head to ask Boundless Mang. "Words spoken must always be kept." Vast Mang Mang said. Gu Fei smiled. "However, I was planning to buy you a drink after I made some money. Now, I only want to buy the lowest quality wine and buy you a drink. How about we cancel out everything in the past?" Boundless Mang said. "Forget about the wine, I'll just convert it to cash." Gu Fei waved his hand. "Are you really that short of money?" Boundless Mang exclaimed. The cheapest cup of wine was only 10 copper coins in cash. She thought that Gu Fei was selling trash here as a hobby. She didn't think that it was really for money. Gu Fei bitterly nodded his head. "Then why don't you go get high-level equipment? How long are you going to sell these?" Boundless Mang said. "I thought that ready-made equipment would sell faster. I'm in a hurry." As soon as Gu Fei said this, he immediately jumped up. He looked at the time and shouted, "Not good. What's wrong?" Boundless Mang asked. Half the people on the street were startled by Gu Fei's voice. "Help me look after the stall. I'll be back in a bit." Gu Fei quickly jumped out from behind the stall. Boundless Mang immediately received a system message. "Qianli Get Drunk has set you as the stall owner." Setting up a stall in the game seemed casual, but it was actually protected by the system. Otherwise, with so many people in the game tearing off their masks and becoming shameless, a street of transactions would definitely become a street of robberies. "Where are you going?" Boundless Mang was at a loss. "The exercise between classes is about to start. I'll be right back." Gu Fei had already dashed away. Exercise between classes? What? Boundless Mang was even more at a loss. Gu Fei quickly ran to the safe zone and quickly went offline. He quickly rushed out of his house and quickly arrived at the school field. The music played and the students swarmed towards the field. Gu Fei let out a long sigh of relief. At least he didn't delay his work. That's right, although physical education teachers usually didn't have classes in the morning, supervising the students' morning exercises and exercises between classes was an extremely important part of their job. Gu Fei had hurried back and forth between the two worlds just for the sake of these 10 or so minutes between classes. After he finished this work, he returned to the game. When he arrived at 2nd Trade Street, he found that in front of his stall, there was a person haggling with Boundless Mang. Why are they only selling for 1 gold? That's a bit of a loss. Beauty, look, this ring can easily be sold for 2 to 3 gold coins. And this dagger, the stats are pretty good, 5 gold should be enough. But the person pointed at a few pieces of equipment. They can't even be sold for 1 gold, they're all trash. Sigh, it's really hard to sell them like this. Actually, I need a cleric to level up. Beauty, how are your skills? Why don't you come with me to level up and get high-level equipment, then we can sell them together. I'm level 40 now, if I have a cleric like you to help me, it won't be a problem for me to level up by 5 levels. You'll be more than 10 levels, and you'll get a lot of experience and high-level equipment. Isn't that great? Do you want to go? This person talked incessantly, looking like he was trying to abduct a young girl who had not seen much of the world. In the game, Boundless Mang was level 31, had a body full of broken equipment, and was selling a bunch of broken equipment. Moreover, the price he set didn't understand the market at all. It was completely in line with the concept of inexperienced. It was a pity that this person made an error of judgment. After saying a bunch of things, Boundless Mang rolled his eyes. Don't give me that, it's no use. The person's motive was seen through, and he was startled. Unexpectedly, he still had the face to continue. Yo, beauty, you don't look like a newbie. Boundless Mang sneered. The person continued. Then you should understand even more. What's the future of selling these things? Let's go, I'll bring you to level up. Seeing that your level is so low, you don't usually have an expert to guide you, right? As he spoke, he suddenly felt a shadow in front of him. He turned around and saw Gu Fei behind him. He was startled. It's you. Before Gu Fei could reply, the person had already climbed up and climbed onto Gu Fei's shoulder. Brother, I saw this first, you can't mess around. Moreover, you're enjoying Amethyst's 50 beauties by yourself. You must be very busy, right? No matter what, first come first serve. The person said solemnly. Wretched. Too wretched. Gu Fei was shocked. Chapter 177. The person in front of him was Tsubasa Sakuratsuka, the founder and guild leader of Forever Among Flowers. In terms of wretchedness, he was definitely the most wretched person Gu Fei had ever seen. What was even more infuriating was that such a wretched person actually looked quite harmless, even cuter than Yutian Shinming. At this moment, Gu Fei's appearance made him extremely nervous. In his mind, a man who could blend into a purely female guild like a fish in water was probably the legendary Casanova. This competitor was just too strong. Therefore, as soon as he saw Gu Fei, he started to make a bunch of excuses. Before Gu Fei could say anything, he had already started to back down. In the end, he was reduced to first come, first served, showing his great lack of confidence. Gu Fei looked at him, then looked at Boundless Mang, not knowing what to say. On the other hand, Boundless Mang, as a female player, had probably seen this kind of thing many times. She stood up and said to Gu Fei, I'll return the stall to you. Then, Gu Fei received a system notification. Tsubasa Sakuratsuka's eyes widened, looking at the two of them. You two know each other? Gu Fei nodded his head and exchanged places with Boundless Mang. He stood behind the stall, and Boundless Mang returned to the middle of the street. You're too much. Do you want to sweep away all the beauties in the world? Tsubasa Sakuratsuka said angrily. Gu Fei lowered his head. He felt that as long as he responded to this person's words, then he would look very wretched. Let's go. In Boundless Mang's eyes, Tsubasa Sakuratsuka was like air. After saying goodbye to Gu Fei, he prepared to leave. Tsubasa Sakuratsuka hurriedly ditched Gu Fei and chased after him, continuing to pester him. Beautiful, what's your name? My name is Tsubasa Sakuratsuka, you can call me Zazai. Gu Fei's face turned green as he explained to the players around him, I don't know him. The people on both sides vaguely answered Gu Fei. Everyone was busy vomiting. On the other side, the boundless Mang Mang couldn't help but act up. Originally, it was a delightful thing for a girl to be popular with male players, but it was a completely different scene when she met such a wretched fellow who pestered her with all his might. He shouted at Tsubasa Sakuratsuka, You're so noisy, don't follow me. Tsubasa Sakuratsuka's eyes were filled with determination. One had to know that there weren't that many beauties in this world. Moreover, there wasn't any makeup in the game. Everything was natural, so there were even fewer beauties. It wasn't easy for Tsubasa Sakuratsuka to find one, and he wouldn't give up until his head bled. Where is the beauty going? I'll accompany you. Aren't you from Moonlit Night City? You must be unfamiliar with our city, let me show you around. There's a Yunjiao lake outside of our cloud city. The scenery is great, do you want to go take a look? Tsubasa Sakuratsuka's smile was extremely perverted. All the players in Cloud City knew the main purpose of the Yunjiao Lake. Go away, go away. Dazzling Mang took out her priest's staff to chase Tsubasa Sakuratsuka away. Tsubasa Sakuratsuka could be considered a talent to be able to force a priest to use a staff to hit someone. He continued to laugh as he dodged and asked, Where are we going? Yunjiao Lake? Dazzling Mang was furious and furious. She was also a person who killed without blinking an eye. At this moment, she wanted nothing more than to tear Tsubasa Sakuratsuka into pieces. But the problem was that she was only a priest. Even if they were at the same level, she didn't have the ability to kill. Just kill me. Dazzling Mang waved her staff and hit Tsubasa Sakuratsuka while shouting. How can I do that? I want to protect you. Look at you, a priest, alone in Cloud City. It's quite dangerous. There are actually a lot of bad guys here, especially perverts. Tsubasa Sakuratsuka didn't plan to make a move. Too shameless. The crowd sweated profusely. Dazzling Mang wanted to turn around and run, but Tsubasa Sakuratsuka's speed wasn't even a match for Gu Fei. He easily walked side by side with Dazzling Mang. Do you want me to pull you? You can run a bit faster. Dazzling Mang chose to ignore him. Her eyes looked straight ahead and only cared about walking. Tsubasa Sakuratsuka didn't mind at all and just followed at the side. Brother, you're too ruthless. Someone exclaimed to Tsubasa Sakuratsuka. Tsubasa Sakuratsuka smiled faintly, stopped 2 steps and said to everyone, Don't abandon, don't give up. After saying that, he quickly chased after Dazzling Mang, leaving behind a street full of speechless people. As someone who knew the two, Gu Fei was even more shocked. Dazzling Mang was also a fierce and ruthless character. Unfortunately, she was a priest and didn't have the ability to fight at all. If she was any other profession, she probably would have fought with Tsubasa Sakuratsuka just now. And Tsubasa Sakuratsuka definitely wouldn't kill a girl. At this moment, with Dazzling Mang's attitude, he actually dared to say, Don't abandon, don't give up. This person's face was really unparalleled in the world. Dazzling Mang, you've met your match this time. Gu Fei sighed. He didn't know if this was a blessing or a curse. But for Gu Fei, it was definitely a curse. This uninvited guest, Tsubasa Sakuratsuka, had messed up his business. Originally, Dazzling Mang would have bought 4 or 5 things from Gu Fei. This stinking brat. Gu Fei muttered to himself and casually took out the money pouch from his pocket to count the money. How many people had this kind of fantasizing, as if the more money they counted, the more it would become? Of course, fantasizing couldn't become reality. The 43 gold coins in the money pouch were untouched. Sigh. Gu Fei sighed and reached into his pocket again. It seemed like he wanted to search for the unpacked money in the corner. Unexpectedly, after this search, he was immediately stunned. When his hand reached into his pocket again, he pulled out another money pouch, a dark red money pouch. The designer of the pocket in the game was most likely a Doraemon fan. When players wanted to take things out of their pockets, They could only rely on touch. The only advantage was that there were compartments in the pockets. As long as you put things in place and reached your hand to the right position when you wanted to take something, you would be able to grab the right thing and not touch blindly. In the early stages of the game, players didn't have many things in their pockets, so taking things out was extremely accurate. After a period of time, everyone's pockets were bulging. There were often mistakes when taking things out, and incidents of pulling out a piece of bread in a fight happened from time to time. It was a joke. How to arrange the pockets properly and how to accurately and quickly take out weapons in battle became a compulsory course for experts. Gu Fei had also practiced this before, so his taking out of things was extremely accurate. There were no mistakes at all, and he didn't even notice that there was a money pouch in his pocket. Why would there be a money pouch? Gu Fei didn't understand. Before today, Gu Fei never counted money, so he didn't know the situation of his assets. In short, he would take out the money pouch when there was a need to spend. The money pouch in the game was also a storage space like a pocket. As long as there was money, he could take things out of the money pouch. Gu Fei grabbed handfuls of this money pouch. The more he counted, the bigger his eyes became. Soon he counted 429 gold coins. Such a large sum of money made Gu Fei quickly think of its origin. He won it. When he was in prison, he won it playing dice with Silver Moon and the others. However, he didn't know why the system put this money into another money pouch for Gu Fei, so he didn't notice it. Throwing money around was a good habit that often created a sense of surprise. He didn't think that the system god also had this hobby. Gu Fei was very pleased. The rich Gu Fei naturally wouldn't be a merchant anymore. He threw a pile of things to a nearby player at the super low price of 20 gold coins, took the money, and walked away. After returning to the Mage Academy and paying the gold coins, the class change quest was immediately completed. The NPC teacher smiled and told Gu Fei that he could now perform the class change ceremony at any time. This was a big deal. The system, who took 200 gold coins, was still very responsible. It gave Gu Fei a magic handbook, which explained water and electricity in detail, reminding players to choose carefully. Gu Fei had already made up his mind to switch to water. He didn't care about the difference between the two skills. He only needed the freezing effect that water mages could use. He took the handbook and flipped through it. Just as he was about to perform the class change ceremony, he suddenly heard someone say, "Yo, it's you. Long time no see." Gu Fei turned his head and looked. It was Hongchen Yixiao. This person's name hadn't appeared in a long time. Gu Fei had thought that he had done enough testing and didn't enter the game anymore. It was quite a pity that he had lost a walking dictionary. Now that they met again, Gu Fei cast Identify on them like a professional player. He was only level 32. It seemed like he hadn't played much. His equipment was also very simple. If Gu Fei hadn't gotten rid of that pile of trash, he could have helped him. "Long time no see." Gu Fei replied. "I've been too busy recently. I don't have time to play." Hongchen Yixiao sighed. "What kind of insider information?" Gu Fei asked casually. Alright, got it." Although they hadn't seen each other for a long time, Gu Fei hadn't forgotten his catchphrase. At this time, Hongchen Yixiao glanced at the magic handbook in Gu Fei's hands and smiled. "Yo, you're going to class change?" Gu Fei nodded. "Which class?" Hongchen Yixiao asked. "Water." Gu Fei said. Hongchen Yixiao frowned. From the data they had observed, 80% of the mages who had class changed had chosen water. This didn't affect the income of the game company, but it was a very bad thing for the game makers. After all, the Thunder class was a system that had been carefully designed. Now that it was so unpopular, it was equivalent to denying a large part of their work. Red Dust Smile didn't think that the two systems he had designed were biased in the slightest. The freezing effect of the water class could slow down people's movements, but the paralysis effect of the Thunder class could prevent people from using skills. It was also very practical. Apart from that, the Thunder class had the advantages of fast skill activation, high speed, and high attack. At this time, Hongchen Yixiao felt injustice for the Thunder class. All he thought about was the benefits of the Thunder class. Facing this guy who was going to join the army of the Water class, he couldn't help but ask, Why do you want to change? Actually, the Thunder class is just as strong. Chapter 178. Gu Fei smiled disapprovingly and said, "Really? Even if Hongshan Yixiao was an in-game member, he couldn't change the effect of a water element to an electric one, right? Apart from this effect, the other effects weren't what Gu Fei wanted. Why do you want to switch to water?" Hongshan Yixiao wanted to understand a player's inner world. Freezing effect. Gu Fei said, This? Hongshan Yixiao didn't know what to say. If it was because of this reason, then he couldn't explain it. This effect was one of the specialties of the water element. You couldn't say that freezing wasn't as useful as paralysis. That would be like slapping your own mouth. These two systems were created by them. Thus, he could only emphasize the benefits of the electric element. The reason why so many people didn't choose the electric element was probably because they didn't see the advantages of the electric element. People who are paralyzed can't use skills. Characters without skills are just paper tigers. You've played the game more than me, so you should understand. There are many instant cast skills in the lightning element. If you can make good use of these skills, you can put less points into spirit. If you like to put these points into intelligence, in addition to the high damage of the lightning element, your final attack power will be terrifying. After saying this, Hongshan Yixiao was startled because he felt that this wasn't a good reason to convince Gu Fei. The guy in front of him was a full agility mage. Would there be any point in talking to him about intelligence and spirit? But he did not know that there was another point in his words that had moved Gu Fei. Instant skills. This was quite tempting to Gu Fei. Currently, the dual flame flash was an instant cast spell. It was the most commonly used and strongest spell among Gu Fei's spells because it could be easily used in conjunction with martial arts. Clearly, instant skills had an advantage in this area. But he quickly thought about it. Dual flame flash was enough to increase the attack power of his sword. There was no need for more instant skills. What he needed to use was Kung Fu. If he didn't have the freezing effect of the water element to catch up to his opponent, no matter how many instant skills he had, it would be useless. While he was thinking, Hongshan Yixiao was still explaining the other benefits of the lightning element. Gu Fei took the opportunity to ask while Hongshan Yixiao was panting, "Does the lightning element have a freezing effect?" Quan Bai said. Hongshan Yixiao was indignant. He couldn't help but say, "Freezing effect. If it's just for this effect, many weapons have added it. On the other hand, the paralysis effect is a rare sight to behold." His words sounded reasonable, but to a mage it was pure deception. In the parallel world, in order to activate some of the special effects of the weapon, one had to use the weapon to attack the opponent. But mages waving their staffs to release spells didn't count. They had to use their staffs to attack people. Were there any mages who fought like that? But this time, it was a lucky hit. Deception for normal mages was more suitable for Gu Fei. Gu Fei was slightly tempted again, but after thinking about it, he said, "I have a ready-made skill, I can just learn it. Why do I need to get a weapon? Don't you think I'm tired?" Hongshan Yixiao said patiently, "I'm afraid you'll regret choosing the water element for the freezing effect. The lightning element is also very fun. I say, as a self-disciplined gamer, isn't it unfair for you to guide the players to make a choice?" Gu Fei said. Hongshan Yixiao's attempt to pull Gu Fei into the lightning element was too obvious. "Of course not." Hongshan Yixiao hurriedly explained, "I just feel that many players don't realize the advantages of the lightning element, so I explained it to you in hopes that you'll make the choice you need the most. I'm thinking from the perspective of the players. What advantages does the lightning element have? Didn't you hear what I said?" Hongshan Yixiao was going crazy. "Actually, I only need the freezing effect of the water element to slow down the enemy's speed and make it easier for me to catch up. See, this is what I need the most." Gu Fei said. "Catch up to the enemy?" Hongshan Yixiao was startled. "Then you should choose the lightning element." "But the lightning element has the skill, teleport." Hongshan Yixiao said. "Teleport?" Gu Fei was startled. Teleport was a skill that mages who were good at mages in games would have, but the name was different. Some games would call it teleportation, but it only had one effect: teleportation. Gu Fei only knew a little about games, so he naturally didn't know that there were common skills that all kinds of games would use. What's the use? Gu Fei flipped through the booklet. A person who only knew a little about games wouldn't even know how to write the word teleport. It's teleport. In the parallel world, it's a lightning element skill, so it isn't marked on the skill tree. Hongchen Yixiao said, "Teleport." This time, Gu Fei wasn't just excited. Compared to teleport, no matter how fast it was still trash. The speed of teleport, in theory, was infinitely fast. What level do I need to have this skill? Gu Fei asked. He already couldn't wait to try it out. It's a bit later, but I can get a scroll to learn it. Hongchen Yixiao said. Switch to lightning element. Gu Fei decided. Hongchen Yixiao wanted to say something, but he saw Gu Fei's body start to glow with electricity. It was obvious that he was already in the middle of the lightning element class advancement ceremony. At this time, it was too late to regret. The choice was only a matter of moments, and this ceremony was just a cut scene that couldn't be skipped by pressing ESC. Congratulations to player Qianli Drunk for becoming a lightning mage. Your mana has received the blessing of lightning. After the cut scene finished, the system announced that Gu Fei's class advancement was complete. At the same time, he also learned the first lightning mage skill, lightning spell, which could summon lightning from the sky to strike the target. Chant, thunder and lightning, descend. Gu Fei was a bit speechless, and asked Hongchen Yixiao, "You said that lightning element skills are faster, is it because the chant is shorter?" Currently, the chant was only Fireball, which was the lowest level skill. He didn't think that a level 40 lightning spell would also have 2 words. The number of words determined the chanting speed. This was indeed a problem that couldn't be ignored. The mages all put in a lot of effort into chanting. The chant was as clear and fast as a crosstalk actor's jingle. No, it's indeed faster, you'll know when you use it. Hongchen Yixiao said. Oh. Gu Fei nodded in satisfaction. He liked to be fast. What else do you want to say? Gu Fei asked Hongchen Yixiao. He remembered that Hongchen Yixiao seemed to want to say something when he started his class. Looking at Gu Fei's high-spirited appearance, Hongchen Yixiao suddenly felt a little nervous. Could it be that he had unintentionally done something inappropriate again? This guy, he actually wanted to get along with him, but looking at him now, it seemed like he had given him a helping hand and made him stronger. Indeed, the way Gu Fei played the game with a full set of skills broke the traditional thinking of game design. Although he was a mage, he considered himself to be a close combat class. Teleportation, originally a mage's main skill to escape from a close range, or to increase the distance between them and deal with others. Now that a close combat class had it, it naturally gave rise to a different chemical reaction. Hongchen Yixiao indeed unintentionally led Gu Fei onto a brighter path. Right, there's something I've always wanted to ask you. Gu Fei saw that Hongchen Yixiao didn't say anything, so he began to speak. What is it? Hongchen Yixiao's energy from when he tried to get Gu Fei to join the lightning class was gone. He was a little listless. Look. Gu Fei took out the night streamer for Hongchen Yixiao to see. Hongchen Yixiao's facial muscles twitched. His desire to get along with Gu Fei was extremely strong. With such advanced equipment, how could other players of the same level survive? Gu Fei didn't know Hongchen Yixiao's state of mind and said to Hongchen Yixiao, "This sword is called the Night Streamer. Can you see its attributes?" Hongchen Yixiao said that a few exquisite equipment were the proud creations of the designer, and this Night Streamer was one of them. Hongchen Yixiao didn't need to see its attributes to know. This sword has a skill called Night Streamer. When I got it, I said that it didn't meet the requirements and couldn't be used. Even after a long time, it was still the same. What are the requirements? Gu Fei said. If it doesn't meet the requirements, then of course it doesn't meet the requirements. Hongchen Yixiao replied. That's it? Gu Fei was a little disappointed. If there was something profound within it, then it would be fine. He could think of a way to solve it, but it was just this simple reason. The Night Streamer's equipment requirements were sword coefficient and number of magic classes. Gu Fei relied on the Moonlight Spirit Robe to reach his magic coefficient, but his sword coefficient was still far away. According to current player research, adding points to strength was the main way to increase sword coefficient. Gu Fei's current agility wasn't enough, so he didn't have any plans to add points to strength. What's more, he was only curious about the sword skills. He didn't have any expectations. Gu Fei mainly relied on his own skills when he fought. Actually, every time he used skills like the Cinder 3000 Layers Flames, other people thought it was amazing, but he felt that it was quite boring. Thus, after hearing this answer, Gu Fei didn't say anything else. This silence immediately made Hongchen Yixiao feel extremely disappointed. He had just decided that he shouldn't help Gu Fei anymore. If he asked about coefficient knowledge, then he would coldly reply that he didn't know and couldn't say anything. Who would have thought that Gu Fei didn't seem to care about this and didn't even ask about it? Just as he was about to say something, he saw Gu Fei wave his hand at him. "Go do what you need to do. I'm going down." With a flash of white light, Gu Fei disappeared. Hongchen Yixiao was so depressed that he wanted to stab himself. Chapter 179. Although Gu Fei had gone offline, the news about him did not stop. Countercurrent was defeated in a PK battle with Gu Fei and was thrown into jail. His thoughts about Gu Fei did not stop there. However, once he was in jail, there was no way he could contact anyone else in the game. Countercurrent was not slow either. After he went offline, he used other methods to contact his guild mates who had witnessed his PK battle with Gu Fei. Countercurrent was comforted when he learned that they had asked for Gu Fei's name. He then told them to keep quiet for the time being and returned to the jail cell. The PK battle had allowed Countercurrent to understand Gu Fei better. How to entice this person to join the association became the problem that they had to overcome. On the other hand, the Yunmu Guild's guild master, Ancheng Matsu, did not know that he had missed the best opportunity to get Gu Fei to come knocking on his door. It was already afternoon when he went offline and returned to the game after eating and sleeping. Compared to the wee hours of the morning and early morning, the scene in the game was naturally different. As soon as he went online, he received a message from the female spy he had sent. "I've contacted Amethyst, but I've been rejected." This guild required a recommendation from someone in the guild to join, and they did not want anyone who volunteered themselves. Ancheng Matsu was stunned. Different guilds had different ways of recruiting people. For example, Amethyst was the hardest to deal with. These guilds were usually small and did not have any grand ambitions. However, the atmosphere in the guild was great. The members were close and inseparable in the game. It was not impossible to join such a guild, but it required time. One had to get familiar with certain members of the guild and gain their approval before they could join. He did not know how long it would take. Ancheng Matsu immediately cancelled his spy plan and prepared to implement the gold dollar plan that he had been preparing for a long time. When he opened his friends list, he saw that Countercurrent was still online. "I wonder how this guy is doing?" Ancheng Matsu thought to himself as he sent a message. In the end, he received a system notification saying, "The other party is not in the service area." The experienced Ancheng Matsu knew what this meant and was secretly delighted. He thought to himself, "Going against the current, this brat stumbled and fell into the trap. I'm going to have the upper hand in this headhunting battle." With that, the Ancheng Matsu became even calmer. He calmly assigned the guild members who were online to work while he strolled toward the direction of the city gate. The system notified him that he had received a new mail. "Did you find out what you wanted? Feel free to write to me if you need anything." Ancheng Matsu looked at the message. It was sent not long after he went offline. The name of the letter was Shishao Tian. Beside the name was a vivid smiling face, looking at him with a smile. "It's her." Looking at the smiling face, Ancheng Matsu was immediately reminded of the beauty who bid 1,000 gold coins to him and Countercurrent last night. He sneered and tore the letter into pieces. 1,000 gold coins? He might as well rob it. He could just throw some money at the reincarnated amethyst girl. He did not believe that no one would be tempted by money. Ancheng Matsu was extremely confident in his gold dollar plan. A moment later, the Yunmu Guild spies were all over the city. They did not know who Gu Fei and the others were, but they still knew the reincarnated amethyst girl. Putting aside the fact that they had fought face-to-face last night, they usually paid attention to this pure female guild. None of the girls were online last night, which was why they could not find any of them. Now that it was broad daylight, Unchung had already received several tip-offs, pointing out the location of several reincarnated amethyst girls. You guys just keep an eye on them. I'll contact them one by one, instructed Unchung. At that moment, the nearest target was heading toward the east gate where Unchung was. Unchung adjusted his armor and struck a dashing pose as he stood under the city gate. Not long after, he saw the 4 reincarnated amethyst girls walking in his direction. Not far behind them, there was a thief from the Yunmu Guild following them in stealth. Of course, Unchung could not see them. He only received a message from the thief. The 4 girls are coming. Unchung saw it all. When the 4 girls slowly approached him, he cleared his throat and said, "Beautiful ladies." The 4 girls stopped and turned to look at him. Unchung smiled and said, "I want to ask you something." "What is it?" The girls were quite warm-hearted. "You are reincarnated amethyst, right?" Unchung asked even though he already knew the answer. The 4 girls nodded. "Is there a male player in your guild?" He still asked even though he already knew the answer. The 4 girls still nodded. "What's his name?" Unchung tried his best to speak casually, as if he was just asking casually. The original plan last night was to ask the reincarnated amethyst girls. Project Jinyuan would only be activated if he could not get an answer directly. The 4 girls immediately became alert and asked, "Who are you?" The girls' vigilance was something they had developed over a long period of time. There were often male players who tried to ask for the names of the girls in the guild in an attempt to woo them. In order to avoid entanglement, the girls would not casually reveal the names of the girls in the guild before they asked for the person's opinion. Although Gu Fei was a man, the girls had developed this habit. If someone asked for the name of the person in the guild, they would first ask for the person's intention. "My name is Unchung," said Unchung. He was ranked 6th on the warrior leaderboard. Based on this alone, Unchung name would attract attention in other main cities. However, the 4 fellows from Cloud City looked at each other blankly and asked, "Who's that?" "The leader of Yunmu Guild. He fought with you last night." Unchung was quite depressed. It was fine if they did not know him when they met, but why did they not know him when they heard his name? Was he such a passerby? "Oh, it's that idiot guild that only sent 50 people to the guild war despite having 500 people?" a girl said. Another girl immediately pinched her. "Don't talk nonsense," she said while sneaking a glance at Unchung. Unchung felt wronged. However, he could not say anything because it was the truth. As for whether it was stupid or not, in the end, Yunmu lost. "Do you think it was stupid or not?" Unchung coughed and changed the topic. He continued to ask politely, "I want to know the name of that male wizard of yours." "I remember you," one of the girls shouted. "You came to ask after the guild war last night." Unchung nodded. "Sister Xiao Wu said that we can't tell you." "Let's go. Let's go." The 4 girls turned around and were about to leave. Sigh. Unchung hand was already in the money pouch. He was about to activate the gold dollar plan when he suddenly closed his mouth and let go of his hand. At that moment, Unchung had an idea. This was a group of 4 girls. If he wanted to fork out money, he had to satisfy all 4 of them. If he asked one of them to ask for 100 gold coins, now that the 4 of them were together, 100 gold coins would become 25 gold coins. This meant that he had to pay 4 times more. It was not worth it. Why should he hang on to this tree? With this thought in mind, Unchung asked for the location of his next target. 3rd Trade Street, setting up a stall. Someone reported the second target that was close to Unchung. Unchung hurried to 3rd Trade Street. His subordinates had already approached the intersection and led Unchung to a girl's stall. He waved his hand and pointed. Unchung looked at the girl. She was a grandmaster of combat. She was hugging her knees and squatting on the ground. In front of her was a small stall with several broken equipment. The girl was looking around in anticipation. Looks like you need money. Unchung Matsu smiled and walked forward. A few minutes later, a commotion broke out on 3rd Trade Street. Unchung Matsu hugged his head and squeezed out of the crowd. A few pieces of equipment chased after him and were thrown out. A Grandmaster of Combat girl waved her fist and shouted, "You want to poach people from our guild? You want to bribe me with money? Brat, don't run." Unchung Matsu escaped from 3rd Trade Street in a sorry state. The guild member that was in charge of tailing him also chased after him. He looked at Unchung Matsu in confusion. "Guild leader, why are you so afraid of her? There are too many people here. It's not suitable for this." Unchung Matsu was sweating. As soon as his intention was revealed, the girl was furious. He wasn't afraid of the girl. He was afraid of the eyes of so many people on Trade Street. Bribery, and kickbacks were all done in private. Now that he was shouted out in the busiest street, Unchung Matsu was naturally embarrassed. Trade Street, Tavern. Those who are gossipy in these crowded places should be put aside for now, Moody of Yunzhong announced with lingering fear. There are fewer people here. Someone immediately reported. It was a street with few people in Cloud City. Unchung Matsu asked as he rushed there, "What is she doing here?" "Seems like she's doing a quest." The member reported. "What kind of quest is there?" Unchung Matsu was confused. "I don't know." The member was also confused. Could it be some kind of hidden quest? She has been doing it here for a long time. Is that so? Unchung Matsu was delighted. He hurried to the street and saw 2 members looking around. When they saw Unchung Matsu coming over, they pointed in a certain direction and explained to him. "We calculated it. She will be there every 7 minutes. 6 minutes have passed. Come over immediately." As they spoke, a girl appeared on the other side of the street. She ran towards the direction the 2 members pointed. "I'm going." Seeing that the other party was also a warrior, Moody of Yunzhong felt a sense of familiarity. Tidying up his armor, he ran towards the other party's direction with a clatter. Chapter 180. Unchung Matsu's footsteps were steady, but he had a wild thought in his mind. Not to the lady in front of him, but to the quest that the lady was carrying out. There was a quest here too? This was something that Unchung Matsu had never heard of before. They were both warriors. Perhaps this was a quest that would be very helpful to him? Unchung Matsu thought that he should get this quest out of her first. After all, getting information about Gu Fei was to strengthen the guild, but getting a quest would strengthen him. Given the choice of letting the guild be in the limelight or letting himself be in the limelight, Unchung Matsu chose the latter without hesitation. Ahem! Unchung Matsu coughed to attract the lady's attention. "What are you doing here, beautiful?" Unchung Matsu asked casually. "A quest," the lady answered. It was very common for a lady to be hit on, especially in the game where everyone was thick-skinned. The ladies were used to this kind of thing. "Oh, what kind of quest is it?" Unchung Matsu continued to ask casually. "Wheat in the soil," the lady answered. Every quest had a name. The quest that the lady mentioned was something that Unchung Matsu had never heard of before. Although the name of the quest sounded very simple, it was obviously very stupid to judge the meaning of the quest based on the name of the quest. It was just like how a person's name didn't represent how knowledgeable he was. Unchung Matsu was excited and he asked carefully, "How do I get it?" "Talk to the people here," the lady said as she knocked on the door. A hunchbacked old man opened the door. His eyes shone with the light of accumulated experience, and Unchung Matsu was instantly overwhelmed with emotions. Old people who were in their twilight years usually liked to leave behind rich legacies. This idea was recognized by many game designers, so they often created mysterious old men to issue mysterious quests. Looking at the person in front of him, hiding in a secluded street, if someone didn't accidentally knock on this door, who would know that there was such a quest here? "Young man, do me a favor. I have some wheat scattered in the market. Can you help me find them? Remember, you must find it within 5 minutes. Otherwise, the wheat might be picked up by someone else." The old man issued the task to the young lady. The girl quickly turned around and left. Unchung Mutsu also wanted to go forward, but the old man ignored him and closed the door. Unchung Mutsu hurriedly went forward and knocked on the door. He was worried that the mission would not be given to him because the lady had accepted it. The door opened and the old man appeared again. He looked at the Unchung Mutsu and repeated what he had said to the young lady. Unchung Mutsu agreed without hesitation. Immediately, the mission, Wheat in the Soil, appeared in the mission panel. The mission description did not seem to be anything special. Unchung Mutsu was puzzled as he headed towards the market. The market that the NPC mentioned was naturally not the trading street formed by the players. It was a place where some system merchants gathered to sell system goods. This place was not as lively as the trading street, but there were still many players coming and going. Unchung Mutsu looked around the market but could not find the wheat. Could it be that the young lady had already picked up the wheat? Was that why he could not find it? When Unchung Mutsu arrived at the market, he saw the young lady leaving. Unchung Mutsu quickly wandered around. After more than 5 minutes, he heard a system prompt. The quest was labeled as failed. This is difficult. Unchung Mutsu was surprised. At that moment, he saw the young lady appear in the market again. Seeing Unchung Mutsu, the young lady smiled. You accepted the quest? Unchung Mutsu nodded. Did you find the wheat? Unchung Mutsu shook his head. Hee. A strange smile appeared on the young lady's face. She calmly said to Unchung Mutsu, use your brain. Unchung Mutsu carefully pondered the meaning of the young lady's words, but he still could not understand. 1 minute later, the young lady asked him, did you think of it? Unchung Mutsu shook his head in confusion. Hee, what is the name of this quest? The young lady asked. Wheat in the Soil, Unchung Mutsu answered. Correct. The young lady applauded him. Unchung Mutsu continued to be confused. So, the wheat should be found in the soil, the young lady said. Huh. Unchung Mutsu was stunned. Look. As the young lady spoke, she walked to a corner and grabbed a piece of rag that was exposed from the soil. She pulled it hard and a small cloth bag fell into her hands. This is the wheat in the soil, the young lady said happily to Unchung Mutsu. Good luck. The young lady turned around and left. Unchung Mutsu was dumbfounded. He realized that he had complicated a simple problem from the very beginning. This quest seemed to be a beginner's quest to find something. This type of quest had always been criticized by the players because the system would hide the quest items in a mess. However, the young lady seemed to be repeatedly completing this quest. If it was such a simple quest, why would she do it? Unchung Mutsu felt that there must be something mysterious about this. Hence, he gave up on this failed quest and returned to the old man to retrieve it again. This time, he knew the target, but how could a small piece of rag hidden in the soil be found so easily? In the end, he failed again. This went on for the 7th time. Unchung Mutsu, who knew every inch of the market like the back of his hand, finally found the rag within 5 minutes. Unchung Mutsu let out an excited roar and hurried back to the quest acceptance office. He returned the half-filled bag of wheat to the old man with great excitement. Thank you, young man. You've helped me a lot. The old man said as he handed over the reward. Unchung Mutsu took it and looked at it. It was 10 silver coins. How could this be? Unchung Mutsu mumbled to himself. Was this the only reward? Unchung Mutsu was not satisfied. If this was the only reward, why would the young lady repeatedly complete it? As he thought about this, Unchung Mutsu looked around and realized that the young lady had disappeared. He quickly sent a message to the guild member who was in charge of keeping an eye on her, but the member was even more confused than he was. Boss, didn't you already contact her? Yes. Unchung Mutsu could not say it. He had temporarily abandoned his dream of strengthening the guild because of his selfish desire to strengthen himself. The 3rd mission ended with the disappearance of the target. At the same time, it left Unchung Mutsu with deep doubts. It's such a simple mission. Why did she repeatedly complete it? This question lingered in Unchung Mutsu's mind. Unfortunately, his 2 guild members were no longer keeping an eye on him. Otherwise, they would have told him, Guild leader, you also repeated it 7 times, however, he still had to deal with the important matters at hand. Unchung Mutsu continued to receive reports from his subordinates. Someone said that they saw a reborn amethyst girl strolling around the auction house. There was no one in the auction house at the moment. Unchung Mutsu rushed to the auction house when he heard the news. He rushed into the auction house and retreated after 5 seconds. The 2 guild members who were guarding outside the door were puzzled. Unchung Mutsu was not in a good mood. Using money to bribe the slim-waist dancer? Do you two have any brains? Failure. Unchung Mutsu's gold elemental attack ended in failure. It was a failure of going for wool and coming home shorn. You just want to know her name. It's not a big deal. You actually want to buy her with money? Who do you think we are? One of the girls that Unchung Mutsu had approached threw out such words. Unchung Mutsu was heartbroken. If he had approached this girl from the beginning, he would not have needed to spend money to find out her name. But now, due to the exposure of the second girl that he came into contact with, he had caused extreme dissatisfaction. She was completely unwilling to reveal Gu Fei's name. She also showed the deepest disdain towards Unchung Mutsu and his guild. He did not know what made him cry even more. Gu Fei quietly went online in the afternoon. Looking at the flyers that were still flying all over the city, Gu Fei felt that it was not easy for them to look for him for such a long time. He originally wanted to take the initiative to contact them. In the end, because of this incident, the girls were all trying to persuade Gu Fei. So what if you have money? These words came from the mouth of the number 1 money warrior in the game, Slim Waist Dancer. It sounded particularly powerful. Even Slim Waist Dancer had this kind of attitude. A mere Unchung Mutsu was really a wretched person. Money isn't everything. The girls shouted in unison. They used their usual deviant spirit to divert the topic further and further. What are you guys talking about? Gu Fei was pulled into the guild channel to participate in the discussion as soon as he came online. He was confused for a moment. July spoke on behalf of the officials and roughly explained the situation. There are quite a few guilds that want to pull you over. If you want to leave, remember to let them know. July said at the end. As soon as she stood on the side of the guild, July always had this businesslike expression. Even if she really approved of Gu Fei and didn't want him to leave, she still showed that she respected his decision. Every member of the guild could be happy. This was July's biggest wish. If someone felt that there was a better choice, July wouldn't stop them. In the past, because the guild would disband once Gu Fei left, they had already forced Gu Fei to stay once. Along with the matter of non-smiler, the guild had unknowingly received a lot of benefits from Gu Fei. I hope he won't leave. This was what July thought. Chapter 181. July's way of thinking was somewhat idealistic. It was impossible for any group to satisfy everyone. Her extreme respect for individuals was a little westernized. Our country advocated collective supremacy, so the minority obeying the majority was a principle we often used when dealing with problems. At this moment, the reborn amethyst, except for July who kept her true thoughts, all the other girls expressed their opinions and tried to persuade Gu Fei to stay. This made Gu Fei even more confused. Amidst the chatter, he weakly asked, When did I say I wanted to leave the guild? The guild channel instantly went silent. The further one's thoughts went, the further one would go astray. The Unchung Mutsu wanted to use gold coins to pry open the girls' mouths. He just wanted to know their names. This matter had nothing to do with whether or not Gu Fei wanted to leave the guild. Oh. The girls stopped discussing the issue after they regained their senses and went back to whatever they were doing. Only a few who had a personal relationship with Gu Fei were still communicating with him in private. Be careful when you make friends. Beware of going astray. Luo advised Gu Fei. People from big guilds like to bully others. Don't do that. Lower Willow had been hurt by big guilds before. Those big guilds are very annoying. They're not interesting. Slender Waist Dance advised Gu Fei with her experience. It was obvious that with her strength, she could enter any big guild with a snap of her fingers. That Unchung Mutsu is super dumb. He doesn't even know that wheat in the soil should be found in the soil. June Rain said. Gu Fei felt sorry for Unchung Mutsu. This was like taking an extremely important exam, only to find out that there was only one question on the exam paper. 1 + 1 equals? How many people would dare to write a 2 and hand it in immediately? Perhaps 1 + 1 would have other answers, but if the person who came up with the question was June Rain, then the answer would definitely be 2. The Unchung Mutsu must have been so worried that he ended up being mocked by the rain in June. How pitiful! Gu Fei sighed with emotion and went all the way to Little Ray's bar. The girls' mercenary group had been eliminated yesterday, so there was no competition at 7 o'clock. Gu Fei still had to represent the child elite group in the competition. It was almost time, so he went to the tavern to meet up with the others. I'm transferring to the electricity faculty. Gu Fei opened the curtain and entered the room. The other 5 were all present, so he immediately announced the news. The others looked at him. Lightning, descend. Gu Fei waved his hand, and a bolt of lightning descended from the roof and struck the table, causing smoke to rise. Stop fooling around. Brother Yu's face was ashen. This bolt of lightning was a little too close to him. They all knew how terrifying the damage of Gu Fei's magic was. The private room was so small. If Gu Fei's hand accidentally bent, the lightning would strike him. Don't worry, I didn't bring any weapons. Gu Fei said as he sat down. Why did you suddenly change your mind to switch to the electricity faculty? Brother Yu asked. I heard that the electricity faculty has the ability to teleport. This will be very useful for me. Gu Fei said. The few experts all sucked in a breath of cold air. They understood Gu Fei better, so they were more aware of how great the chemical reaction would be after Gu Fei had the ability to teleport. Teleport, how could I forget, all mages have teleport. Yutian Shenming muttered to himself. Again and again, Gu Fei's valiance struck down this group of experts in the past. Although they were all friends now, they had unconsciously set up Gu Fei as an imaginary enemy in their hearts. How to deal with this guy, they all had their own considerations in their hearts. And after Yutian Shenming obtained the Windchaser boots, his movement speed was faster than Gu Fei's, making him feel that he already had the ability to contend against Gu Fei. He didn't even realize that his way of dealing with Gu Fei was already out of the ordinary. He actually wanted to use the kiting method to avoid getting close to Gu Fei. Throughout history, it was always the mages who were worried that others would get close to them, but now, they were worried that the mages would get close to them. Gu Fei's style of fighting that reversed the style of the class caused the effects of all the skills of the class to be reversed. For example, Dual Flame Flash, which was a useless skill for normal mages, became the most powerful killing move for Gu Fei. And Teleport, which was originally a defensive skill, became an absolute offensive skill for him. Mages can actually play like this. The experts all exclaimed. I heard that teleport is a skill that can only be learned at a fairly high level, so I want to get a scroll. I hope I can get a scroll in today's match. Gu Fei waved his wrist. Brother Yu shook his head. What do you need, and the system just happens to give you something? How can you be so lucky? Then how do I get one? Gu Fei asked. But, Brother Yu said, go to the forums and post a message. Buy the teleport scroll of eternity from the entire game. It's much more reliable than trying your luck. This. Won't it be very expensive? Gu Fei was deeply worried. He had already experienced the awkwardness of not having money today. The value of a skill scroll depends on the practicality of the skill itself. But the problem is that most of the skills that appear in the form of scrolls are things that players haven't mastered yet, so it's hard to evaluate their practicality. If you want to trade, you can only rely on some previous experience in the game. Brother Yu said. Then what about the teleport skill? Didn't you say that most online games have it? Gu Fei said. The teleport skill is usually instant cast, but the cooldown time is relatively long. It's impossible to completely rely on it to move around and deal with an opponent. The most common use is to escape, or to move to an unreachable position. The value can only be said to be average. It's a bit cheaper with it, but it's not that big of a deal without it. Brother Yu said, that's because you don't know how to use it. Yutian Shenming interrupted. Brother Yu's face was expressionless. What determines a product's value is the majority of people's understanding of it, and not the small number of experts like you. If we price it according to your standards, then for Qianli, the price of teleport should be sky-high. That's right. If a brat doesn't understand, then don't blindly get involved. Gu Fei said to Yutian Shenming. Hey, now that you're an electric mage, do you want my electric skill scroll? Yutian Shenming tried to entice Gu Fei to lower his head in front of him. In the end, Gu Fei didn't even think about it. What's the use of that trash? Although Yutian Shenming hadn't seen an electric wall before, from the description, it should be similar to a firewall. If used properly, it would be a very useful skill, and its value should be higher than teleport. Unfortunately, Gu Fei's understanding of these skills was different from others. The conclusion he came up with made Yutian Shenming cough up blood. You're not a mage. Yutian Shenming angrily said. No one paid attention to him. Brother Yu continued, actually, I'm not afraid of this kind of thing being expensive. I'm just afraid that there's no market for it. But right now, there's a system quest, so there will definitely be players who will get this reward. Also, the skill scroll's distribution ignores the class, so people like Yutian should be very common. You're the bad guy, you're the bad guy. Yutian Shenming yelled. Gu Fei pulled out his sword and placed it on the table. He pointed the tip of the sword at Yutian Shenming and said to Brother Yu, continue. Brother Yu laughed and continued, so you should hurry up and go to the forums to buy it. But I don't have money right now. No matter how cheap this thing is, it'll cost at least 1,000 gold, right? Gu Fei said. Brother Yu nodded. Let's scrape together. Sword Demon said, I have around 200 gold here. I also have around 200, but I need to save some money for drinks. Han Family Young Master said. I have around 300 here. Brother Yu said. Fuck, they're all rich people. I only have around 50 gold. Unscathed in Battle was depressed. Ha, you bunch of poor bastards, How come it's only around 400? Yutian Shenming was originally laughing, but in the blink of an eye, he started crying. He had made a huge profit from his business with slender waist dance. These people who relied on selling high-quality equipment to get rich were the game's nouveau riche. Money came quickly, but it also went quickly. Tisk, everyone's not doing well this time. So poor. Han Family Young Master said. Experts in the game usually weren't too poor, especially top-tier experts like them. Although having a few hundred gold coins in their pockets was already more extravagant than the average player, to their knowledge, with Gu Fei's strength looming over them and their finances being so poor, they were truly in dire straits this time around. When the others heard Han Family Young Master's sigh, they all stared at him. The plan for this competition is ready. It's time for the mercenary group to make a name for themselves. Are you afraid that you won't be able to make money in the future? Han Family Young Master said. Let's not talk about the future. Brother Yu said, we only have around 1100 right now, so it probably won't be enough. After all, this Eternal Skill Scroll is a new item, so its price will only go up. Plus, you might not be the only one buying it. If we start a price war, we won't be able to afford it without at least 3,000 to 5,000. Gu Fei was distressed. He had just experienced the predicament of not having enough money, so why did he have to go back to it? Plus, the demand this time was even higher. Even if he sold all of his junk at the market price, it still wouldn't be enough. Qianli, hurry up and get Slender Waist Dance, I think. Yutian Shenming didn't finish because Gu Fei's sword had moved. Go sell yourself. Right now the whole city is looking for you, so there's definitely going to be a big reward. Unscathed in Battle said. That's not much, only 20 gold. Brother Yu said. Everyone's eyes looked at him. What are you guys thinking? I'm just passing by. Brother Yu said. Which reception point are you looking for? I asked for 30 gold. Unscathed in Battle said. I also asked for 30 gold. Yutian Shenming said. Gu Fei was speechless. Luo's worries weren't wrong, he really was a bit careless in making friends. Chapter 182. Seeing the ugly expression on Gu Fei's face, the three quickly explained, "Don't think too much about it. We were just curious and asked around. We didn't really sell you. Actually, it's not a big deal to sell me. Brother, you said, Qianli, your friend switches off, right? You sold me?" Yutian Shenming and Unscathed in Battle asked Brother Yu. "Of course not. Brother Yu said, it's only 20 gold. That's just the price of a name. Say, if we introduce ourselves to them, the price will go up, right?" Unscathed in Battle said, "It will go up, it will go up." Yutian Shenming nodded. Everyone eagerly looked at Gu Fei, as if they had found a piece of high-quality equipment that was worth hyping. "Let's split it 3 to 7. You take 7 and the 3 of us take 3. Yutian Shenming suggested. Gu Fei's face turned cold. "They've worked so hard to find you. Give them a chance." Unscathed in Battle said. Gu Fei didn't have any intentions of hiding it, but he suddenly became a business. He felt weird. Plus, he had a bunch of bad friends who wanted to push him onto the market. It was too hard to accept. "Don't mess around," Han Family Young Master finally said. This guy's principles are pretty solid." Gu Fei didn't know how to reply to Yutian Shenming and the others. Han Family Young Master helped him out, which made him very happy. Han Family Young Master calmly said, "Right now, there are only 2 guilds paying attention to Qianli. As the competition continues, more and more guilds will pay attention to him. When that time comes, it'll be easier to raise the price." Gu Fei, that makes sense. Zhan Wushang slapped the table and praised. "Qianli, perform well." Yutian Shenming looked forward to it. "How much do you think we should charge for this meeting fee?" Brother, you had already started to work on it. Gu Fei felt that these people were treating him like a dead person. "Names are worth 20 to 30, so it should be 50 to 60 at least if we meet, right? 50 or 60. At least 100. Don't think it's too expensive, there's no discount for this. You have to study the mentality of these guild leaders. In their hearts, a talent like Qianli is very precious. They're willing to pay 20 to 30 gold for his name, so I don't think they'd mind paying an extra 100 gold for intimate contact." "Sai, I think so." They had met Qianli once, but it was unlikely that they could convince Qianli in one go, right? As long as they didn't add Qianli as a friend, they'd have to go through us if they wanted to meet Qianli. That way, they could charge us another fee. If Qianli rejected them 8 to 10 times, wouldn't that be too much for us? You're indulging in fantasy. That way, they'd be able to see that we're brazenly using this method to earn money. That's right. That's why we have to pretend that Qianli isn't aware of it. That way, they won't think too much about it. Yeah, if they find out that we're using this method to earn money, they'll think that we're dirty. You guys still know dirty? I'm against it. Gu Fei shouted. Everyone had a strange expression on their faces. After a moment of silence, Brother Yu laughed. Hee hee, we're just joking. Are you serious? Gu Fei looked them up and down seriously. Unscathed in Battle and Yutian Shenming all smiled and said, just joking, just joking. I have something to do. I'll see you later. Is everything all right? Gu Fei looked at Han Family Young Master. This was because at this moment, they usually needed to talk about their next opponent. I'm fine. Han Family Young Master answered. Today, the mercenary group's opponent was very weak. It wasn't worth mentioning before the match. So, Gu Fei said goodbye to them and left. There was silence in the private room. Yutian Shenming lifted the curtain and looked outside. Are they gone? Unscathed in Battle asked after a while. Yutian Shenming nodded. You see, we don't need Qianli to know about this business. Brother, you said, we can invite the leaders of Uncheng Mutsu and Against the Current to come out and have a chat with Qianli. That's it. There aren't many guilds that know about Qianli's strength. But if they don't know about it, we can create it. Now that the search for Qianli has spread like wildfire, I reckon that everyone is curious. Although Uncheng Mutsu and Against the Current don't want others to know that they are looking for talents, The truth can't be hidden forever. See, don't we all know about it? Brother, you said. If I didn't say it, would you know? Han family young master snorted. If you say it, others will say it too. Add to that the people who are looking for information and advertising all over the city, those with a discerning eye will realize that they are all from these two guilds. They will eventually realize that the mage they are looking for is a big deal. We're just spreading the word to speed up the process. There's no need for Qianli to go round after round to make a name for himself. If he follows Amethyst, he might be eliminated today. Brother, you said. Ah, brother, you're much dirtier than I thought. Yutian Shenming exclaimed. I'll go to the forums tonight and create a dozen sock puppets to hype things up. I guarantee that by tomorrow, everyone will know about songs like Wine and Yunmu Guild. Brother, you said, when that happens, wouldn't guilds like Against the Current get involved? It's hard to say who's stronger in terms of strength and who's weaker in terms of drinking and singing. It's because there isn't a single super elite on either side. Whichever side is able to pull them over 1,000 miles will become the #1 guild in Cloud City. I think all the guilds above Tier 4 will make a move. Brother, you said. We're rich. Unscathed in Battle said excitedly. But how are we going to explain this to Qianli? I don't think he's happy about it. Yutian Shenming said. We'll just treat it as a joke. Qianli isn't that stingy. But with his personality, I'm afraid he won't accept money earned this way. Yutian Shenming said. Brother, you didn't reply and only smiled. Yutian Shenming suddenly realized, Brother, you're too despicable. Too shameless. Then do you want this money? Brother, you asked indifferently. Of course I want it. Yutian Shenming yelled. What about you guys? Brother, you looked at the others. I'll pass. Sword Demon replied indifferently. He stood up, fixed his cloak and walked out. Brother, you didn't seem surprised. He looked at Unscathed in Battle and Han family young master. Unscathed in Battle nodded his head clearly. Han family young master just shrugged his shoulders, indicating that he had no objections. Then he went to drink. Sword Demon won't tell Qianli, right? Yutian Shenming said worriedly. No, he's not that meddlesome. Brother, you said. You seem to know him quite well. Han family young master raised his eyebrows. Brother, you only smiled faintly. Then we have to hurry up. Won't someone get ahead of us? Yutian Shenming said. This will depend on Amethyst. Other than that, I'm afraid Qianli doesn't have any friends. Aren't the two of you quite familiar with the Rebirth Amethyst? You can go and ask around. Brother, you said to Unscathed in Battle and Yutian Shenming. That's reasonable. The two hurriedly got up and left. Originally, they only needed to ask around in private, but how could they give up any chance to talk to the girls? After the two of them left, the Han family's young master said calmly, Of course, there's no problem with the Rebirth Amethyst. If they were willing to talk, the two big guilds wouldn't have taken so long to find out. Since they're not talking, I'm afraid they're not thinking of using this method to earn money, right? Brother, you smiled. Did you prepare the post on the forum a long time ago? The Han family's young master asked. I set it to be updated automatically. The first post should be out by now. Brother, you said. This business, you alone are enough. Han family young master said. Brother, you smiled but didn't say anything. You're dragging us into this again. Looks like you're afraid that Qianli will act out, so you're tying us together, right? Han family young master said. No way, we'll all earn money together. Brother, you said. Why bother? Arrange it properly, Qianli might not notice. Han family young master said. Brother, you smiled faintly. Too many coincidences will make him suspicious. It's fine to meet a friend occasionally, but if everyone tells him the same thing, do you think he won't be suspicious? You've thought it through. Han family young master said. I hope you succeed. Han family young master said. Don't say that, you have shares too. Brother Yu's face showed a confident smile. At this time, Gu Fei left Little Ray's bar and arrived at the System Pub in the central plaza of Cloud City. As soon as he entered, he saw Shi Xiaotian waving at him from the corner. Gu Fei hurriedly walked over there. What he meant by something was that Shi Xiaotian had called him over. Although the two of them had added each other as friends, it was the first time they sent a private message. Gu Fei was very surprised, so he rushed over to see what she wanted. At the table in the corner, besides Shi Xiaotian, there was another person sitting. When Gu Fei approached, that person turned around with a smile. When he saw Gu Fei, he was immediately startled. "It's you. You know each other?" Shi Xiaotian was surprised. "Child elite group, reborn amethyst. I can't believe that my mercenary group and guild were all defeated by you." The person at the table was the president of Yunmu Guild, Unchung Matsu. "In that case, we're fated." Chapter 183. In order to get the name Qianli Drunk, Unchung Matsu had gone through a lot of hardships. This afternoon, he was despised by more than 50 girls. This was an extremely painful thing for any man. Unchung Matsu was sad and angry. He couldn't take this lying down. Finally, he sent an email to the person who claimed to be Shi Xiaotian. He wanted to have a good talk with her. A name was worth 1,000 gold coins. As long as one was sane, he would not be fooled. Unchung Matsu had been holding back his anger for a long time. He had made up his mind. If this girl refused to budge on the shameless price of 1,000 gold coins for a name, he would kill her. The ending made Unchung Matsu feel relieved. Shi Xiaotian brought valuable information. She was not only selling a name. She could also arrange for Unchung Matsu to meet with her. After negotiating the price, both parties went to the central tavern. Unchung Matsu was a little worried that Shi Xiaotian would collude with some sorcerer to trick him. He was thinking about how to test this sorcerer's ability. When he turned around and looked at Gu Fei, he felt a lot more at ease. Both of them had fought against each other in the mercenary competition. Although Gu Fei's main task was to cover his head and run like a rat, it was obvious that he was a rare master. If it was this person, he could be more or less reliable. As Unchung Matsu was thinking about this, he realized that Gu Fei's face was extremely unfriendly. It could even be said that he was slightly angry. At this moment, he was staring fiercely at Shi Xiaotian. "Brothers, sit," Unchung Matsu said weakly. Gu Fei sat down. "Let's add each other as friends first," Unchung Matsu said. Only by casting a long line could he catch a big fish. Unchung Matsu was not confident that he could convince Gu Fei in one go, but as long as he added him as a friend, there would be chances in the future. This was the bottom line for the Unchung Matsu to meet Gu Fei this time. As long as he could achieve this, he would feel that this trip was worthwhile. "What's the matter?" Gu Fei asked the Unchung Matsu. Frankly speaking, after listening to the girl's description of Unchung Matsu in the afternoon, Gu Fei did not have a good impression of him. Of course, he knew the purpose of his visit, but he was asking the obvious and wanted to send him away as soon as possible. "Hee, nothing much. I just want to make friends with you, brother." Unchung Matsu knew how to take things step by step. Even he couldn't think of a good reason to invite the other party to join his guild, so how could he expect the other party to agree? As for the simple courtesy of making friends, ordinary people wouldn't reject it, right? First, add him as a friend, then slowly get to know him, then cater to his interests and attract him to join the guild. Yunzhong's Moody's calculations could not be said to be lacking. Who would have thought that Gu Fei would reject it right from the start? He said indifferently, "I don't think there's a need for that." Unchung Matsu was stunned. "I don't like your name," Gu Fei said. This reason was like child's play, but Unchung Matsu couldn't refute it, so he was speechless for a while. "Let's go." Gu Fei stood up and pulled Shi Xiaotian up. "What's wrong?" Shi Xiaotian was stunned, but Gu Fei was already pulling her out. "Hey!" Unchung Matsu reacted and quickly stood up to chase after them. On the other side, Shi Xiaotian followed Gu Fei's footsteps and turned back to reach out to Unchung Matsu and kept saying hey. The scene was like a pair of lovers who were forcibly separated by the tyrant Gu Fei. "You haven't paid the money yet, I'll come back to you." Shi Xiaotian's last words broke the remaining grace. Gu Fei grabbed Shi Xiaotian and quickly went out the door. Unchung Matsu hurriedly chased after them, still saying, "Hey, hey, hey," but he could only watch the two of them go further and further away. Gu Fei and Shi Xiaotian, one was a full agility mage and the other a full agility archer. Uncheng Mutsu's movement speed was nothing compared to them. Gu Fei didn't stop until Uncheng Mutsu was completely out of sight. Shi Xiaotian was very confused. "What's wrong? How much did you charge me to meet them?" Gu Fei said, 400 gold coins. I wanted to charge 1,000, but it seems that the recent economic crisis has made everyone's wallet a bit tight. They were so angry when I asked for 1,000 gold coins, but they weren't willing to pay. Then I lowered it again and again, and now it's 400. That's not all. He only gave me 100 gold coins as a deposit, and I still need 300 gold coins. I was going to give you this 300 gold coins, but now that you suddenly left, I think there's an 80% chance that he won't pay, and it's very likely that I won't get it. Forget it, forget it. I've already received 100 gold coins. I'm kind enough to give you half of it. As Shi Xiaotian spoke, he took out a money pouch from his pocket and waved it in front of Gu Fei. "Reach out and take it." Shi Xiaotian pretended to fall. Gu Fei originally had a stomach full of anger to vent, but now he didn't know where to start, so he could only shake his head and say, "I don't want it." "Why not?" Shi Xiaotian asked. Gu Fei took a deep breath. "Next time when you want to make money, please use other methods. Don't use me as a cover, thank you." After Gu Fei finished speaking, he turned around and left. Shi Xiaotian was stunned on the spot. After a while, he reacted and hurriedly chased after him. Suddenly, there was a whistling sound, and a sniper shot was fired from the side of the street. Shi Xiaotian's reaction and speed weren't bad, and he dodged the arrow in a flash. Then he heard someone shout, "He's here!" Hearing this, Gu Fei turned around and saw a number of people rushing out from the street and surrounding Shi Xiaotian. Gu Fei turned around and put his hand into his pocket to pull out his sword, but he heard the people surrounding him curse, "You liar!" Gu Fei was slightly startled, and the hand that was already holding the sword hilt in his pocket loosened. "Who's lying to you?" Gu Fei heard Shi Xiaotian struggle to explain, but it was a pity that this group of people clearly weren't here to listen to her. After surrounding him, they immediately attacked. Shi Xiaotian tried to slip away from an opening, but was struck back into the circle by a warrior next to the opening with a whirlwind slash. Although he didn't die, he only had a trace of life left. Two mages stretched out their hands and cast two spells, and Shi Xiaotian disappeared with a flash of white light. Archer shooting range. A few people shouted and turned around to hurry on their way. Gu Fei saw one of them and said, "You guys are from the Yunmu Guild?" A few people looked at Gu Fei with a slightly puzzled expression. One of them nodded and said, "Yes." "How did that girl lie to you?" Gu Fei asked. "For you." The few people looked at each other and asked Gu Fei. "I was also tricked by her." Gu Fei's words weren't false. "Oh, we're not too sure about the specifics, but our guild leader said that he was tricked by her." After one of them finished speaking, the few of them no longer paid attention to Gu Fei and hurried towards the archer shooting range. Gu Fei was slightly startled, and hurriedly found another way to run towards the archer shooting range. Along the way, he saw quite a few people running in that direction. There were still some familiar faces that he had seen during the guild war yesterday. They were probably people from the Yunmu Guild. Gu Fei's speed was much faster than normal players. When he arrived at the archer shooting range, there were already quite a few people gathered there. The place he was at just now wasn't far from the archer shooting range. With Gu Fei's speed, he still fell behind so many people. This could only mean that this was a very premeditated pursuit. There were already people lying in ambush here. This ambush was too arrogant. Who would be stupid enough to rush out and die if they were to directly block the main entrance? The experienced Gu Fei muttered as he ran over. He heard the people from the Yunmu Guild making a ruckus. "Where is he? Where is he?" Someone shouted. "I don't know, I haven't seen him come out." Someone answered blankly. A few people entered the safe zone and searched, but there was no trace of him. "He's probably offline." Someone guessed. Gu Fei opened his friend list. As expected, Shi Xiaotian's name had also darkened. It seemed like Shi Xiaotian's experience in counterattacking was incomparably rich. As soon as she was killed back to the safe zone, she immediately went offline. The people lying in ambush outside didn't know if she had come back or not. After causing such a huge ruckus, the target of their pursuit had gone offline. This was one of the most disappointing things in the game. Anyone who encountered this kind of difficulty would feel helpless. This was a difficulty that couldn't be solved in the game. The people from Yunmu Guild were dispirited and prepared to leave. Someone shouted, "The guild leader is here." The crowd turned in one direction. Gu Fei was among them. He stretched out his head and looked towards the street. Sure enough, he saw Unchung Mutsu and a few other guild members rushing over. Where is he? Unchung Mutsu also asked the same question. He logged off. Everyone said regretfully. Unchung Mutsu tried to add him as a friend again. Sure enough, it was true. Motherfucker! Unchung Mutsu cursed towards the sky. Guild leader, what's going on? Some people still didn't understand the situation. This woman colluded with a mage and pretended to be the person we're looking for. Unchung Mutsu said, "You've probably seen the person who pretended to be a mage before. He's the mage from Child Elite Group. We met him in the mercenary competition." Unchung Mutsu added. In the crowd, Gu Fei hurriedly lowered his head. In reality, there weren't many people who could recognize him. Both sides had fought before. However, there weren't many people who had actually met Gu Fei face to face. Perhaps if Gu Fei showed them his back, there would be more people who could recognize him. On the day of the competition, Muyun mercenary groups people chased after Gu Fei's back. Everyone immediately expressed their condemnation. Gu Fei couldn't take it anymore. He squeezed out of the crowd and said, "Guild leader Yunmu, is this a misunderstanding?" Chapter 184. Unchung Mutsu didn't doubt Gu Fei's identity at first. However, Gu Fei and Shi Xiaoyan's sudden departure was really strange. In addition to Gu Fei's, "I don't like your name" excuse, Unchung Mutsu couldn't help but be suspicious. Everyone in the guild had suffered a lot because of this matter for a day and a night. Now that they were fooled again, how could Unchung Mutsu not be angry? He immediately mobilized the whole guild to hunt down the two of them. When the guild members asked about the loss of being scammed, Unchung Mutsu was too embarrassed to tell them the truth. 100 gold coins wasn't a small amount, but it wasn't necessary to mobilize a few hundred people to hunt them down. Unchung Mutsu's regret for losing this bit of money was secondary. The main thing was that he couldn't take it lying down. When you were in despair, someone lit up your hope and made you put all your hopes on it. But in the end, you found out that it was all a scam. Not many people would let it go with a smile. Just when they were ready to boost the morale and launch the biggest hunt since the establishment of Yunmu Guild, Gu Fei suddenly came out from the crowd. Unchung Mutsu was suddenly at a loss. Who is this person? The people of Yunmu were whispering. As expected, no one could recognize Gu Fei. What's going on? Unchung Mutsu was at a loss. It's a misunderstanding. Let's disperse first. Gu Fei said as he turned around and waved at the people of Yunmu. Let's disperse. Let's disperse. There was actually a guy with a one-track mind who wanted to leave as soon as he heard people disperse. Unchung Mutsu quickly stopped him. Wait. Gu Fei turned around and looked at Unchung Mutsu innocently. Give me an explanation, Unchung Mutsu said. Shi Xiaotian didn't lie to you. I'm indeed the person you're looking for, Gu Fei said. Reborn Amethyst? Unchung Mutsu asked. Gu Fei nodded. How can you prove it? Unchung Mutsu asked. Gu Fei was troubled. Once upon a time, Gu Fei felt ashamed that a man like him was mingling in a guild of pure girls, and he did everything he could to prevent others from finding out. Who knew that today he had to find a way to prove to others that he was a member of this guild of girls. Seeing that Gu Fei didn't say anything, Unchung Mutsu, the Yunmu Guild raised their weapons. Gu Fei racked his brains. It seemed that he wouldn't be able to appease the public if he didn't produce some evidence. He was good at slashing people, but he had never experienced such a scene before. Unchung Mutsu snorted coldly. It's not that easy to impersonate a guild member. Do you have a guild badge? Gu Fei regretted it again. The guild emblem was a special item used to prove a player's guild identity. Possessing a guild's emblem meant that one was 100% certain that the person was a member of that guild. Back then, Lu Luo had once asked him to do it, but Gu Fei had politely declined on the grounds that he would be leaving soon. After that, no one had mentioned it again. Therefore, Gu Fei was the only player in the game without a guild badge. At the same time, he also became the first player to be asked to show his guild badge to prove his guild identity. I didn't bring it, Gu Fei said. Everyone booed. The guild emblem was called a special item. Naturally, it had its own uniqueness. It would be an independent space in the pocket and wouldn't take up any space. It wouldn't take up any equipment slot when worn on the body, and it wouldn't increase the weight when held in the hand. What reason was there to not bring it with you? The archers knocked their arrows, the mages raised their staffs over their heads, the warriors' swords glinted coldly, and the rogues' figures began to disappear. Gu Fei quickly shouted, "Don't panic, don't panic. Is there any other way to prove it?" "Other way? You can just kill us all." Uncheng Matsu sneered. Therefore, Gu Fei carefully examined the current situation. More than 100 people from Yunmu's guild had already gathered outside the archer's shooting range, surrounding Gu Fei. The situation was somewhat similar to the day when he had flown into Jiao Dang's camp. However, that day, he flew into the enemy's formation unexpectedly. The suddenness was comparable to teleportation, which was why the enemy was caught off guard. At this time, the people of Gu Fei's guild were on full alert. In this narrow space, Gu Fei couldn't dodge the mage's area of effect spells, and it was even more impossible for him to cast spells without being interrupted. At this moment, looking at the large empty space behind the Yunmu formation, Gu Fei yearned for the legendary teleportation even more. "How is it? Speechless?" Uncheng Matsu sneered. "The difficulty is a bit too high. Can't you lower the standard and leave 20 or 30 people for me to try?" Gu Fei said. The Yunmu people were stunned. Uncheng Matsu's words about killing us all were just a casual remark. They didn't expect Gu Fei to take it seriously. Although he wouldn't be able to kill all of them, if he could really challenge 20 or 30 people, that would be extremely overpowered. As Uncheng Matsu was hesitating, Gu Fei's eyes suddenly lit up. He said excitedly, "How about this? I'll fight all of you, but no one will use any skills. How about that?" Everyone's eyeballs almost fell out of their sockets. If they didn't use skills, their battle power would be greatly reduced. However, the person in front of them was a mage. If a mage didn't use skills, wouldn't their battle power be 0? Under these circumstances, he wanted to challenge 100 people. What was he thinking? Uncheng Matsu looked at Gu Fei in shock. After thinking for a while, he had a plan. He smiled at Gu Fei and said, "This is interesting. All right, I'll play with you." "Good. That's great." Gu Fei excitedly rubbed his hands. Uncheng Matsu waved the great sword in his hand and said to the guild members, "Everyone listen up. Don't use any skills. Just use normal attacks." Everyone nodded in amazement. After that, Uncheng Matsu secretly sent another message. "This guy's movement speed is extremely fast. If he's trying to escape in the chaos, immediately use your skills to kill him." As soon as Uncheng Matsu said this, the people who participated in the mercenary battle immediately recalled how this mage left their large group behind. They all praised their guild leader for being able to predict the enemy's moves. This person must have come up with this idea to escape the encirclement with speed during the chaos. When Uncheng Matsu heard this, he instantly became more confident in his judgment. He ordered a few bandits to sneak to the periphery of the encirclement. If the enemy really escaped, they would intercept him on the spot. With this, he made appropriate arrangements for a series of problems such as what to do if Gu Fei suddenly used a skill, and what to do if he suddenly wanted to escape to the safe zone. In short, in the hearts of the Yunmu guild members, Gu Fei would definitely act shamelessly. Otherwise, how could a mage fight against 100 people? "Guild leader Yunmu, can we start?" Gu Fei asked. Uncheng Matsu recalled the arrangements and felt that Gu Fei would definitely not be able to escape. He immediately nodded and said, "Yes, we can start." Alright. Gu Fei responded. He pulled out his sword with his left hand and his knife with his right. He took a few steps back and leaned against the wall of the safe zone. Instead of advancing, he retreated. It did not look like he was trying to escape. Moreover, he was holding two weapons? What was he trying to do? Everyone in Yunmu Guild was stunned. However, why would they be afraid of 100 people facing a mage who did not use any skills? Without waiting for Unchung Mutsu's order, 4 warriors rushed out from the crowd and pounced toward Gu Fei. Without using any skills, the violent warrior class was the class with the highest attack in the parallel world. 4 people and 4 swords slashed down at the same time. They wanted to eliminate Gu Fei in one round. However, with Gu Fei's skills and speed, he was least afraid of a warrior who did not use any skills. The only thing he had to worry about was the defense of the warrior's armor. Therefore, Gu Fei purposely held the fire baptism in his right hand as he was afraid of encountering a class with high defense. 4 people and 4 swords, but Gu Fei dodged them easily. With a push of his right hand, he executed 2 birds with 1 stone. This swordsmanship could kill 2 enemies with 1 slash. Gu Fei was able to execute it perfectly when he was only level 38. At that moment, the 2 warriors did not even see clearly before they were struck in the chest. The swordsmanship did not cause any damage, but the 2 flames that were ignited caused the 2 warriors' expressions to change. Before they could react, the swordsmanship was already in front of them again. The 2 warriors were still sheathing their swords after the first slash. The speed of Gu Fei's attack shocked the 2 of them. Naturally, they were struck again. By the time the 2 warriors sheathed their swords, Gu Fei's 3rd slash had arrived. The 2 warriors actually worked together. One of them swung his sword to block Gu Fei's sword, while the other continued to swing his sword. Unexpectedly, Gu Fei raised his left hand, and the night streamer blocked the other's sword. Gu Fei was not strong enough and was pressed down by the opponent's giant sword. The warrior was delighted when he heard a clanging sound. His sword had struck the sword that his comrade had used to defend against Gu Fei. The fire baptism floated in and set fire to each of the 2 warriors. The other 2 warriors attacked again. Gu Fei did not panic, calmly dealing with the 4 warriors. The fire baptism in his right hand was used for offense, while the night streamer in his left hand was used for defense. Although the weapon in his other hand only had a little bit of defense, Gu Fei used the technique of borrowing force to fight back, and he did an outstanding job of defending. As soon as the swords of the 4 warriors were touched by Gu Fei's sword, they would unconsciously slash in another direction. The fire baptism continued to attack, and the speed at which it burned was also extremely fast. In the blink of an eye, a warrior's HP dropped to 0. After a flash of fire, he disappeared. Gu Fei was startled and felt a bit of regret. He said to the remaining 3, "When the blood is red, shout and retreat. It's a pity that you lost a level." The 3 were both angry and afraid. They roared, expressing that they would not retreat. The Yunmu Guild on the periphery finally realized that Gu Fei was skilled. Several people began to rush out of the crowd to join in the encirclement of Gu Fei. Behind Gu Fei was a wall, so he only needed to deal with the people in front of him. The Yunmu Guild had more than 100 people, but in reality, there were only a few who could surround and attack him at close range. Gu Fei was calm and easily dealt with them. In the blink of an eye, 2 more people fell. After Gu Fei once again gave a reminder, "When the blood is red, shout and retreat," everyone in the Yunmu Guild felt that if this situation continued, they might really end up killing 100 people. Chapter 185. Gu Fei didn't hide his kung fu at all. His movements were nimble, and the rhythm of his attack and defense were orderly. Every move was elegant and precise. Although no one in the Yunmu Guild knew kung fu, they could tell that the person in front of them had been trained. Those who had practiced martial arts would definitely have a great advantage when fighting against ordinary people. However, they might be able to defeat 1, 2, or 3 people, but it was impossible for them to defeat dozens or even hundreds of people. Even like now, it was impossible to face only 4 or 5 people at a time. Because in reality, there was a problem of stamina. Ordinary people couldn't withstand such a wheel battle. When one's stamina was exhausted, a goddess wouldn't suddenly appear in one's heart and give one an endless universe. At that time, the opponent could stab one to death with a finger, and it would be useless no matter how skilled one was. However, Gu Fei wasn't in reality, but a game. Although games pursued realism, there was one thing that was extremely illusory, and that was fatigue. Whether it was the continuity and thrill of the game that the players needed, or the game company needed to maximize profits, fatigue was a very dissonant attribute. Disharmonious things would, of course, end up being harmonious. At that moment, Gu Fei didn't feel tired at all. Instead, he felt great. Frankly speaking, because skills were banned in this battle, it didn't look intense, exciting, or beautiful. The flames from Gu Fei's flame baptism were the only colorful fireworks. The people in the Yunmu Guild were in an awkward situation. Since Gu Fei had made full use of the terrain, they were limited to 4 people at a time. If there was one more person, they wouldn't be able to use their full strength. Even if there were 4 people, they were only limited to straight or diagonal slashes. If they swung their arms horizontally, they would need the other 3 people to squeeze in to give them some space. It was too troublesome. Gu Fei had been loudly advocating retreat when blood is red, and many people had already accepted it. However, the first person to eat crabs still didn't show up. Everyone could only endure it out of respect. If the opponent didn't retreat, Gu Fei couldn't do anything. Moreover, he wasn't a soft-hearted person to begin with. If this was when Gu Fei first started playing the game, he wouldn't have given out such a kind notification. It was only because he had played a lot of games that he had some understanding of the hardships of leveling up. He understood the values of ordinary players, so he put himself in their shoes and thought for them. In a short while, 3 more people died under Gu Fei's blade. Other than the new substitute, the other 3 were already red. They looked left and right, hoping that one of them would put down his arrogance and take a step back. They promised that they would respond immediately. Unfortunately, there was still nothing. The 3 of them shared the same sorrow in their hearts. Just as they were about to brace themselves, they suddenly heard someone call out from behind, "Retreat when the blood turns red." Everyone could tell that this was the voice of their president, Unchung Matsu, and they were comforted. At this moment, the Unchung Matsu stood out. What he said was no longer an order, but a way out that was wide enough for everyone. After hearing Unchung Matsu's words, he did not feel any psychological burden at all. The 3 people in the middle of the battle immediately retreated. The substitute quickly took their place, and the battle continued. With Unchung Matsu's order, no one dared to resist. In a short while, 2 more people retreated, and the substitute took their place. The cycle repeated. Slowly, a unique square formation appeared in the Yunmu Guild's formation. The members there were all from the Blood Red clan. Unchung Matsu looked at this group of people, and he felt extremely anxious. If they did not use their skills, even if Unchung Matsu attacked personally, he would not be any stronger than the others. However, seeing his brothers retreating one by one, it would be his turn to fight. By then, he would end up in the same situation as everyone else. How would he be able to show his face? Just as he was feeling frustrated, a member slipped to Unchung Matsu's side and said, "President, we can't continue like this. This person's skills are too good. If he doesn't use his skills, it's basically a trap. If he continues like this, as long as he doesn't make any mistakes, no one can do anything to him." I know. Unchung Matsu naturally understood this. He was hoping that Gu Fei would make a mistake. "President, actually, we don't have to fight him like this. His attacks can't kill anyone. Ask our brothers to take his attacks head-on. There's a wall behind him, and there's no way to retreat. He definitely won't be able to dodge with that little space. 4 of our brothers are enough to throw him to the ground." Actually, Unchung Matsu had thought of this a long time ago. However, he felt that this method was a little shameless, so he hesitated for a moment. As expected, after this person suggested this method, someone immediately objected, "Isn't this a little shameless? What else can we do? In short, this method isn't good." Then let the president decide. In the end, the ball was pushed to Unchung Matsu. Unchung Matsu was hesitant. That person encouraged him again. "Let's do this, President. This person is too strong." Too strong? When Unchung Matsu heard these 3 words, he suddenly reacted and waved his hand. "Stop." The 4 people besieging Gu Fei couldn't attack him no matter how hard they tried. He either dodged their attacks or stopped them with his sword. Just when they were feeling depressed, they heard Unchung Matsu's order to stop. As if they had been granted amnesty, they happily stopped. "There's no need to fight anymore," Unchung Matsu said. "You're very strong." His underlings' unintentional praise for Gu Fei finally made Unchung Matsu remember why they fought with Gu Fei. It was to test Gu Fei's strength, to see if he was the powerful mage in black. At this moment, although Gu Fei's skills seemed to have nothing to do with the masked mage's high magic damage, he was still a very powerful master. This was a definite conclusion. Since this was the case, there was no need to continue fighting. Whether he was the masked man in black or not, Unchung Matsu only had one thought in mind: to rope him in. Ahem! Unchung Matsu cleared his throat and stepped forward. He first praised Gu Fei. "Brother, your skills are not bad. Have you trained before?" "I only know a little." This was the humble answer a warrior should have. Unchung Matsu was not concerned about this. He only asked, "Brother, which guild are you in now?" "Reborn Amethyst." Gu Fei answered. "Are you really that person?" Unchung Matsu asked. "That's right." Gu Fei answered. Yunmu's flyers were flying all over the city. Gu Fei randomly picked one up and poked it, saying, "I am this person." Unchung Matsu took a deep breath. Just as he was about to make a big move to rope him in, he suddenly heard someone shouting, "What are you doing? What are you doing? Why are there so many people around?" A person forcefully squeezed into the circle of Yunmu's guild and stuck his head out to look around. When he saw Gu Fei standing alone in the center of the circle, he was instantly delighted. "Ah, it's you. I was just about to look for you." Gu Fei took a look and saw that it was the wretched Tsubasa Sakuratsuka. Unchung Matsu also knew Tsubasa Sakuratsuka. Although they were not very close friends, they would at least stop to greet each other when they met on the road. They were a pair of budding friends. Unchung Matsu knew that Tsubasa Sakuratsuka was also an expert on the level leaderboard. He also managed a small guild. When he heard that Tsubasa Sakuratsuka was looking for Gu Fei, Unchung Matsu's heart immediately tightened. Is this guy also thinking of the same thing? Unchung Matsu thought and quickly walked a few steps forward. He walked in front of Tsubasa Sakuratsuka and said, "Uezai, long time no see. Oh, old Mu. Why you here?" As he said this, he looked around and asked, "Everyone is in your guild. What are you doing?" Before Unchung Matsu could answer, Tsubasa Sakuratsuka looked at the circle of people surrounding Gu Fei at the foot of the wall. He had already realized what was going on. He immediately patted Unchung Matsu and said, "Old Mu. I know this guy. Give him some face and don't make things difficult for him." Hearing Tsubasa Sakuratsuka speak so seriously, Gu Fei felt a little uncomfortable for a moment. Moreover, he was pleading for him. He really didn't treat him as an outsider. Not at all. Unchung Matsu's eyes were bright. There was a small misunderstanding earlier. Actually, we wanted to invite Brother Qianli to join our guild. Join your guild? Tsubasa Sakuratsuka seemed to have heard the funniest joke in the world. With an exaggerated expression of surprise, he walked a few steps to Gu Fei and put his hand on Gu Fei's shoulder and said, "Brother Qianli is one of us. He won't be interested in your lousy guild." Unchung Matsu was immediately stunned. He understood the concept of "one of us" that Tsubasa Sakuratsuka meant. When he first met Tsubasa Sakuratsuka, Unchung Matsu also tried his best to invite him to join the Yunmu Guild, just like how he faced Gu Fei today. However, Tsubasa Sakuratsuka rejected him without hesitation. He told Unchung Matsu about his hobbies and his determination to fight for them. Not long after that, Unchung Matsu heard that this guy had formed a very wicked guild and gathered a group of like-minded players. From then on, Unchung Matsu no longer had any ideas about him. Now, when he suddenly heard Tsubasa Sakuratsuka say that Gu Fei was also one of them, he vaguely thought of something. Tsubasa Sakuratsuka continued his introduction. Moreover, Brother Qianli is one of the best among us. He single-handedly entered the beautiful guild of Reborn Amethyst. His strength of character and methods are really admirable and admirable. That's right. Unchung Mutsu suddenly came to a realization. This guy was alone in a weak guild with a bunch of girls. He was obviously jackals of the same tribe as Tsubasa Sakuratsuka. Why did he not think of it earlier? When Unchung Mutsu figured it out, he suddenly looked disappointed. His expression when he looked at Gu Fei also changed from admiration to disappointment. After looking at the two of them with deep contempt, he waved at the Yunmu people. Let's go. Wait, you must have misunderstood. What misunderstanding? Don't talk nonsense. I have something urgent to talk to you about. Tsubasa Sakuratsuka grabbed Gu Fei. Chapter 186. Gu Fei turned around to face Tsubasa Sakuratsuka, just in time to see him looking at Gu Fei with a very admiring gaze. What do you need from me? Gu Fei asked. Tsubasa Sakuratsuka wiped his mouth. That beauty from this morning, what's her name? You didn't even get that out? Gu Fei had seen Tsubasa Sakuratsuka's shameless pestering. Even though he knew that Mang Mang was also very strong-willed and stubborn, when the two of them were compared, there would always be a difference in who was better. Gu Fei originally thought highly of Tsubasa Sakuratsuka, because his shamelessness and vulgarity had already caused the entire Second Trade Street to fall in love with him. Tsubasa Sakuratsuka somewhat dejectedly shook his head. Ruthless, that woman is too ruthless. But Gu Fei asked. In the morning I followed her all the way to the leveling area, straight to the high-level area. I thought that she was going to level up with me, but when we got there, she suddenly hugged me. Wow, that was too explosive. Gu Fei exclaimed. She was really explosive. Tsubasa Sakuratsuka bitterly smiled. Then we were surrounded by a dozen or so monsters, and then we directly returned to the city. Gu Fei was dumbfounded. Then what about her? She died earlier than me. Tsubasa Sakuratsuka said. Too valiant. Gu Fei said. Tsubasa Sakuratsuka cried bitterly. I really regret it. Now you know how powerful I am. Gu Fei sighed on his behalf. Tsubasa Sakuratsuka was ranked 18th on the archer level leaderboard. To be able to reach this rank, his experience was probably not far from rising to 41. But now that he had died, Gu Fei used Identify on Tsubasa Sakuratsuka and saw that his level was 39. Why would I be nervous? Why didn't I take this opportunity to touch her? Sakurazuka Tsutsuo couldn't help but feel regret. Gu Fei, if it were you, Brother Qianli, you definitely wouldn't make such a low-level mistake. Tsubasa Sakuratsuka looked at Qianli with admiration again. I'm leaving. Gu Fei didn't want to talk to this person anymore. Just now, when this person stood beside Gu Fei, he could cause the Unchung Mutsu to misunderstand him. It could be seen that this person's image was deeply rooted in people's hearts. Hey, don't leave in such a hurry. You still haven't told me what the girl's name is. Tsubasa Sakuratsuka hurriedly chased after him. Dropping a level didn't cause his speed to drop by much. He still didn't lose to Gu Fei. Facing the leader of Cloud City's gangster group, Gu Fei felt that he had an obligation to keep the girl's information a secret, even if the other party was Boundless Mang. Asking for Boundless Mang's opinion was a very reasonable thing to do, but the problem was that Boundless Mang wasn't online at the moment. I don't know. Gu Fei could only say this. How could that be? Don't you guys know each other? We kind of know each other, but I don't know your name. Gu Fei gave a vivid example. In fact, he had heard it before, but he just didn't remember it. My name is Tsubasa Sakuratsuka. Tsubasa Sakuratsuka said. She hasn't introduced herself to me like this. Gu Fei said. No way? Tsubasa Sakuratsuka squinted his eyes, trying to discern the truth from Gu Fei's expression. Gu Fei's eyes suddenly lit up and he pointed behind Tsubasa Sakuratsuka. "Look, there's a beautiful girl." After saying this, he turned around and wanted to run. In the end, Tsubasa Sakuratsuka turned a deaf ear to Gu Fei's words. He didn't even turn his head back and immediately chased after Gu Fei. After running a few steps, he had already arrived in front of Gu Fei and blocked his way. Gu Fei was naturally very surprised. He didn't think that Tsubasa Sakuratsuka would actually not fall for this kind of trick. Tsubasa Sakuratsuka sighed and shook his head. "The tallest tree in the forest will be destroyed by the wind." "What do you mean?" Gu Fei didn't understand why he said this without even shaking his head. "In a forest, the tallest tree will always be the first to be blown down by the strong wind. That girl is the most prominent tree in the forest in my eyes. From now on, this strong wind will only blow towards her. As for the other flowers, grass, trees, they are no longer in my sight." Tsubasa Sakuratsuka said sadly. Tsubasa Sakuratsuka's use and deconstruction of idioms made Gu Fei gasp in amazement. What was even more surprising was that this guy seemed to be using these words to express that he was a person who was serious and focused on relationships. This was really too unbelievable. Taking advantage of his sadness, Gu Fei turned around and wanted to slip away again. Tsubasa Sakuratsuka seemed to lack the endurance and interest to pester a man. This time, he unexpectedly didn't chase after him. Gu Fei turned around to observe the situation. Seeing the guy standing alone on the street, he seemed to be a bit pitiful. In a moment of sympathy, he waved his hand at him. "I'll tell you when I find out her name." Tsubasa Sakuratsuka was overjoyed. He took a big stride and chased after him. "Really? Now let me go first," Gu Fei said. "Brother, where are you going?" Tsubasa Sakuratsuka seemed to want to send Gu Fei off. Gu Fei was startled. He suddenly thought of something and quickly looked at the time. At the same time, he saw the constantly flashing message notifications. Time made him wail. Not having the time to look at the messages made him very sad. At this time, it was already 7:03. The mercenary competition would start at 7 o'clock sharp. Gu Fei and the Yunmu Guild's people had been entangled for too long and actually delayed the competition. And this competition didn't seem to be very intense. Because Gu Fei wasn't present, the few people just lightly asked about it. No one was in a hurry at all. Gu Fei was unwilling to give up. After saying goodbye to Tsubasa Sakuratsuka, he hurriedly rushed to the transportation circle outside the mercenary building. But how could the rigid system tolerate this kind of mistake? At this time, the transportation circle only allowed exits. Gu Fei tried various postures, but to no avail. Just as he was about to send a message to his comrades in the mercenary group to inquire about the situation, the transportation circle flashed white. 5 familiar figures gradually appeared. They had been transported out so quickly, and all 5 of them looked relaxed. There was no need to ask about the outcome of this competition. After meeting up, the 6 of them naturally went to Little Ray's bar. Along the way, Gu Fei asked the 5 of them. After learning that there were only 6 opponents, and that there weren't any top-notch experts, he felt a lot better. After arriving at Little Ray's bar and taking a seat, the Han family young master began to speak. After this competition, the mercenary group's business will be on the right track. I'm afraid we will often face some opportunities to distribute rewards. Money will always hurt feelings. So, we need to seriously, clearly, and thoroughly formulate a set of distribution system. Let's split it evenly, Gu Fei disapprovingly said. This is a distribution system that will affect feelings, the Han family young master said. Egalitarianism, this is primitive. The others didn't seem to agree. Then you guys say it, Gu Fei said. Of course, we should choose distribution according to work, which is more in line with our country's situation. The others all said the same thing. You guys already discussed this a long time ago, right? Gu Fei said. The 5 of them looked at each other and said with a smile, we've been through it. Oh, then how exactly will it work? Gu Fei asked. The Han family young master cleared his throat. I've decided that our mercenary group will use the point system. Let me, the leader, work a little harder. I will be responsible for recording the contributions of each mercenary group in the group activities. The contributions will be converted into points. Those with more points will naturally get more rewards. Obviously, the Sword Demon's brother Yu and the others were used to this method and didn't have any questions. The points system will adopt the principle of openness and fairness. Actually, I've already treated each competition as a mission and tried to record it. The Han family young master said. Really? This was the first time the 5 of them heard this news and immediately asked to have a look. The Han family young master took out a small notebook from his pocket and threw it on the table. The few of them gathered around to watch. The others wanted to see how fair and just the young master of the Han family was, while Gu Fei, with a thirst for knowledge, humbly went forward to learn. They casually flipped through the pages and saw the points of the competition against the Muyun mercenary group. Everyone's name was listed on the page. Gu Fei glanced at it and exclaimed from the bottom of his heart that the human brain was indeed more advanced than a computer. If the system were to calculate these contributions, many things that couldn't be expressed in data would definitely be ignored. However, at this moment, the Han family young master's small notebook included everything, big or small. For example, Brother Yu's work of preparing intelligence for the competition earned him 10 points. Obviously, this kind of contribution couldn't be calculated by the system. The members who died in this battle were all regarded as contributions and earned points. As for Gu Fei, who fought alone in the end, because of his importance, he received a high 50 points. The others glanced at it one by one and didn't find any problems. They all praised the Han family young master for being meticulous and fair. As he spoke, he was done with this page. He flipped to the next page, and young Master Han's score in this battle appeared. Written on it were, Han family young master tactical design, 20 points overall strategic design, 30 points commanding, 10 points overflowing with talent, 10 handsome appearance, 10 points leader's allowance, 10 points to make up the whole number, 10 points total, 100 points. Everyone was shocked. They hurriedly flipped through the pages again and found that the Han family young master earned more than 100 points after every competition because of the above content. In the battle with the Amethyst mercenary group, Yutian Shenming and Unscathed in battle earned minus 100 points respectively because of a series of problems such as not listening to commands, not distinguishing between friend and foe, and valuing a lover over a friend. If the total score is negative, it will be carried over to the next mission. Before you earn enough points to make up for it, you won't get any reward. Han family young master pointed at the page and said to the others seriously. After saying that, he took the notebook back. All right, I should write today's. He took out a quill and wrote seriously, Qianli is drunk and absent from work, minus 200 points. Gu Fei slammed the table and stood up. Yutian Shenming and Unscathed in battle also rebelled. We seriously disagree with this point system. Han family young master, you're shameless, minus 500 points. Yutian Shenming shouted. Chapter 187. The private room of Little Ray Bar was in chaos because of the Han family young master's shameless point system. Frankly speaking, it was understandable that the 3 of them had negative points. Yutian Shenming and Unscathed in battle's performance in the battle against the Amethyst mercenary group was indeed over the top, and Gu Fei's act of not showing up should be considered a felony. With the Han family young master's ruthlessness, it was natural that the punishment was heavier than the reward. The main thing that caused the 3 of them to be strongly dissatisfied was the points record that the Han family young master had given to them. To think that he had been talking about fairness before. What was even more infuriating was that he still dared to make it public even though he had recorded it to this extent. It was too bizarre. Facing the indignant gazes of the 3, the Han family young master was completely unmoved. He even took the small notebook back and looked at the contents that he had recorded for himself. He pointed at each item and said, "What's wrong with it? It's all the truth. Tactics, strategy, command, talent, handsomeness, leader. Which one is wrong?" Well, okay, I admit that I added the last one conveniently. This one is gone. As he spoke, the Han family young master crossed out the 4 rounding up. He looked at the 3 of them and said, "No more objections, right? Shameless, minus 500 points." Yutian Shenming roared. The argument continued in the private room. In the end, Gu Fei suggested that the sword demon be in charge of the conversion and recording of the point system. This suggestion received positive responses from Yutian Shenming and unscathed in battle. In the 6-man mercenary group, the 3 of them had reached a consensus. It was inevitable that the Han family young master's authority in the distribution of the points system would be exploited. After another round of argument, the small notebook was finally handed over to the sword demons solemnly. Then should we use the points from the competition? The serious sword demon asked a serious question. Yutian Shenming and unscathed in battle immediately answered, attempting to pull Gu Fei into the same trench again. It was a pity that Gu Fei, who had already destroyed Shameless, didn't care about any of this. We have reason to believe that Gu Fei is the one who suffers the most from not being able to participate in this match. Afterwards, there was a series of discussions on some minor issues. Gu Fei basically just listened and focused on the time. He didn't want to delay the next guild war. Frankly speaking, the guild war was more exciting than the mercenary war because there were more people in the guild war. As far as the eye could see, the map was full of prey. As they spoke, the time for the guild war approached. Gu Fei left the tavern for the teleportation circle and entered the battlefield. As usual, he greeted the girls casually and squatted in a corner. Guild Master July saw that almost everyone had arrived. She stood up and walked to the front, smiling bitterly at the crowd. "We've drawn another big lot today." The guild master wasn't the only one who could look at the matchups. Those who were interested could check it out on the website after logging off. However, Reborn Amethyst lacked such people. So when July was about to announce their opponent, the atmosphere was very tense. July took 2 deep breaths and announced with an expression that said, "Today, our opponent is reigning the 4 seas." Gu Fei wasn't the kind of person who would care about who his opponent was, but when July announced the news, he couldn't help but sigh. This was the 3rd big lot that Reborn Amethyst had drawn. Singing with Wine, Yunmu Guild, Reigning the World, these were all ranked in Cloud City. This was especially true for Wines for Song and Reigning 4. No one would have thought that they would encounter these 2 great guilds one after another. This was because no one could imagine which guild had the ability to defeat either of these 2 guilds. The Reborn Amethyst's victory over Dancing for Wine had already caused a huge uproar. If she could pass Reigning the 4 Seas this time, even if she was eliminated in the next round, she would still become the uncrowned king in the hearts of many. Of course, the girls in the game who were content with a little bit of wealth didn't have such ambitions. Everyone analyzed the situation from the perspective of astrology. In the end, they concluded that it was because guild leader July's horoscope wasn't very good this week, causing her guild to have consecutive bad draws. "Hold on." Grape, the cleric girl that Yutian Shenming had taken a liking to, muttered. "Even Reigning the 4 Seas has been drawn. It seems like July's luck has hit rock bottom this week. As long as she can pass this round, it doesn't matter which guild she draws in the next 2 days. It'll be a rebound after hitting rock bottom. Next week, July's luck will be smooth sailing. There won't be any more problems." Many of the girls were overwhelmed by Grape's profound knowledge. They crowded around her and asked her to predict their luck for the week, month, and even the year. Even Slender Dance squeezed into the crowd and shouted at Grape, "Grape, let me see. I'm an Aries, an Aries." Just like that, the pre-battle preparation meeting turned into an astrology meeting. Even July stopped talking about strategy and information and ran off to discuss astrology with the others. Gu Fei had no choice but to ask around for information himself. He did not forget that Yutian Shenming was part of Reigning the 4 Seas. He immediately sent a message, "How many people will your guild send?" The fall of several major guilds and mercenary groups had caused the people in Cloud City to turn pale at the mere mention of kiting. The guild's reborn Amethyst and the mercenary group's child elite group were two dark horses that had relied on kiting tactics to kill their way to the top. According to Han family young master's strategy, he hoped that the major guilds would have some reservations and reduce their numbers in the competition. The effect was immediate, but Amethyst had taken advantage of the situation. Child elite group had yet to reap any benefits. The young master of the Han family didn't seem to care much about this, and Gu Fei didn't know if he had any other intentions. He asked Yutian Shenming about the number of participants to see if reigning the Four Seas had been affected by Han family young master's strategy. There will be around 700, Yutian Shenming replied. They won't fall for it. Gu Fei took a deep breath. He then asked the Han family's young master for his opinion. The Han family's young master said indifferently, "This method of mine was originally designed for mercenary groups. It's suitable for small-scale battles with less than 100 participants. If it were me, I wouldn't worry about the size of the kite in a guild war that involves hundreds of players." But Gu Fei asked, "Because there is strength in numbers. The more the better," Han family young master said. "So you're saying that reigning the Four Seas has realized that kiting isn't as scary as we thought?" Gu Fei asked. "It's not that scary to begin with. Otherwise, we'd be able to overcome all obstacles with this strategy. Would we still need to be like you and hope for fewer people to come out?" Han family young master said. "How could I hope for that? The more people, the happier I am," Gu Fei said. "Then what strategy are you guys going to use?" Han family young master asked. "Bullshit strategy." Gu Fei was not in a good mood. In this pre-battle meeting with Amethyst, they came to a conclusion. Scorpio and Cancer were the quickest and most harmonious couple. The girls only reacted when the system announced that they would enter the battlefield in 10 seconds. They quickly checked the number of people that had entered the battlefield. "Wow, 703 people," the girls exclaimed. Fortunately, during the pre-battle preparation meeting, they had left 10 seconds of sighing time for reigning Four Seas. They did not completely ignore him. With a flash of white light, everyone entered the battlefield. Since the total number of participants was very similar, this battlefield was very similar to the one where they had fought against Singing for Wine. How are we going to fight? The girls began to ponder this question after they entered the battlefield. Under July's lead, they turned their inquisitive gazes towards the two experts of the guild, Gu Fei and Slender Waist Dance. Unknowingly becoming dependent on someone was indeed a natural trait possessed by quite a number of women. Even the girls who had been reborn as Purple Crystal Maidens were no exception. This included Slender Waist Dance. When the other girls asked how they were going to fight, she turned her head and looked at Gu Fei. "How are we going to fight?" There was no way they could do a group fight. The more people there were, the faster they would die. Gu Fei thought for a moment and waved his hand. "Disperse. Find a place to hide and try not to engage the enemy. Survival is the most important." Slender Waist Dance nodded. "Disperse, disperse." "What about you two?" one of the girls asked the two before leaving. The two looked at each other. Since they had worked together a few times, the two could more or less understand each other's thoughts in battle. When Slender Waist Dance heard that Gu Fei wanted the girls to hide, she knew that he was planning to fight the enemy alone with the two of them. They would kill as many as they could. To put it bluntly, it was still the same strategy: drag it out. "Let's go and find a place to ambush. You cast the spell and I'll cover you," Slender Waist Dance said. Gu Fei nodded and the two set off in the direction where the enemy was coming. "Grape just read my fortune and said that I need a lucky partner this year." Slender Waist Dance seemed to have not had enough of discussing the horoscopes. She pulled Gu Fei over to continue the conversation. Lucky partner? Gu Fei's knowledge of horoscopes was even worse than his knowledge of online games. He could only name all 12 horoscopes and know his own horoscope. That was all. "Keep an eye out for me and see who will bring me good luck," Slender Waist Dance said. "Oh," Gu Fei replied casually. He didn't have the leisure to do that. But when Slender Waist Dance heard his nonchalant reply, she was deeply dissatisfied. She immediately slapped the table. "Forget it. You it is. It's decided." I can bring you good luck? Gu Fei snorted. You need to observe, Slender Waist Dance said. Chapter 188. The girls formed their own groups and left while chatting. Gu Fei couldn't help but sigh. What kind of situation was this? Yet the ladies were still so calm and collected as they chatted. How imposing they were. On the other hand, the two real experts had jumped into the trench and were sneakily crawling forward. Before they could find their opponents, they had already covered themselves in dirt. Do we have to do this? Slender Waist Dance was troubled. Gu Fei nodded. There are 703 people. If we don't hide first, how will we have a chance to attack? Gu Fei was very calm. He assessed the situation and didn't rush over arrogantly like he usually did when he was on a wanted mission. As he moved forward, he asked Yutian Shenming for information. How is it? What strategy are you guys using? Arrow formation. Yutian Shenming replied. What? Gu Fei heard a new term. You'll know when we fight, Yutian Shenming said calmly. Arrow formation? What's that? Gu Fei asked Slender Waist Dance. Slender Waist Dance shook her head in confusion. The trench naturally couldn't go straight from one end of the map to the other. However, the two of them didn't care where it went. They just used it as cover and moved forward. From time to time, they would peek their heads out to see if there were any lone enemies. In the end, they didn't find anything. After crawling in the trench for a while, they found two people in front of the trench who were also peeking their heads out to see what was going on. Heh, you really are my lucky star. Leave these two to me. Slender Waist Dance was very pleased. She shouted and rushed over with quickness. This was also what made Slender Waist Dance different from other thieves. When a normal thief discovered an enemy, the first thing they thought of was to sneak up and ambush them from behind. After all, thieves had very little health. It was very risky to fight them face to face. But because Slender Waist Dance had good equipment, high defense, high attack, and an advantage in speed, she was willing to challenge any enemy face to face. When Gu Fei saw that she had already pounced forward, he immediately knew that it was over. The Slim Waist Dance was simply too fast. He probably wouldn't be able to snatch these two prey. As expected, when Slim Waist Dance charged out at full speed, Gu Fei was immediately left behind. Of course, when the two of them were discovered, they saw Gu Fei and Slim Waist Dance. When they saw the two of them rushing forward, they immediately prepared for battle. The two of them were thieves, and they were thieves with a very logical mindset. So, when they discovered that their opponents were preparing to fight, the two of them activated stealth. It's gone. Slim Waist Dance sighed and slowed down. Gu Fei was in a hurry to rush over, so he didn't notice the two stealthy thieves' whereabouts. The two of them had clearly placed all their attention on the Slender Waist Dance and did not even look at Gu Fei, causing Gu Fei's aura to be ineffective. This situation was undoubtedly dangerous, but Slim Waist Dance did not care at all. She shouted at the air, "Don't tell me he ran away. Come out quickly." As soon as she finished speaking, a person appeared behind Slim Waist Dance and swung his club, knocking her out. Gu Fei was overjoyed and hurriedly shouted, "Don't wake her up yet." The two thieves, one in stealth and the other in stealth, were both behind Slim Waist Dance. They wanted to use the thief's highest damage skill, backstab, to finish off Slim Waist Dance in one go. When they heard Gu Fei's shout, they were stunned. But of course, they had no reason to listen to their enemy's orders. Without thinking, they attacked, each stabbing Slim Waist Dance's back with a backstab. Sigh. Gu Fei sighed. I told you not to wake her up. The Slender Waist Dance, who had been stabbed, turned around and stabbed out with her hand, killing one of them. The other was currently in a daze. Two backstab attacks were actually not enough to kill this female thief. Her defense was truly frighteningly high. While the thief was in a daze, Slim Waist Dance mercilessly sent him out of the arena. Of the two opponents, Gu Fei didn't get a single one. He walked over dejectedly. Slim Waist Dance proudly took out a piece of bread and chewed on it. "I'll leave after I recover my health," she said. Gu Fei helplessly nodded his head. In his heart, however, he was thinking that if things continued like this, he wouldn't be able to get a single enemy. Slim Waist Dance sat on the ground and ate her bread. Gu Fei stuck his head out and looked around. On the vast map, he could faintly see dust flying in the distance. It seemed like a large army was heading in this direction. Gu Fei used his leg to push Slim Waist Dance. It seems like quite a few people are heading this way. Is that so? Slim Waist Dance's health was more or less recovered. She got up and laid on the edge of the ditch to look out. Dust billowed in the air. It seemed like there were quite a few people coming. Look at this scene, there are at least 200 people. Slim Waist Dance said. That's an exaggeration. I think there are at most 100 people. Gu Fei said. Let's bet. Slim Waist Dance said. Bet on what? 1,000 gold coins. Slim Waist Dance said. Gu Fei didn't say anything. Money was something that hurt him. Slim Waist Dance didn't dwell on this issue. She just continued, it seems like they really are coming this way. If you hide in the ditch and cast a spell, I won't even need to cover myself. You're right. Gu Fei nodded. He wasn't very excited about this. Wasn't it just another large-scale AoE kill? Gu Fei wasn't very interested in this kind of strategy. The two laid on the edge of the ditch and watched as the other side gradually approached. They could vaguely make out their figures. The speed at which this team advanced also surprised Gu Fei and Slim Waist Dance. Normally, when a team moved, they wouldn't run too fast in order to take care of slow-moving classes like warriors and priests. However, the speed at which this team advanced didn't seem to be for the sake of friendship. It seemed to be a team that focused on speed. When they got a bit closer, the two could clearly see that this team was made up entirely of archers. Gu Fei recalled the arrow formation that Yutian Shenming had mentioned. Could it be this group of archers? Just as he was thinking, Slim Waist Dance nudged him. They're almost there. Get ready. Just as Gu Fei nodded, he heard whistling sounds. Whoosh whoosh whoosh. Who knew how many snipers came at the two of them? The two of them nimbly ducked their heads and looked up. They saw a lot of arrows fly over their heads and stick into the wall of the ditch on the other side. What good eyesight! The two of them exclaimed. The two of them had only poked their heads out of the ditch, but they were discovered so easily. In the horizontal 4Cs formation, Time Reflected pointed forward and shouted, "Shoot!" More than 100 archers knocked their arrows. They released the bowstrings, and the arrows flew out in all directions. The sound of them tearing through the air was no longer the sound of arrows, but the sound of the wind. The arrows didn't fly straight, but slanted toward the sky. The arrows drew an arc in the air and flew accurately into the ditch. The range of arrows in the game wasn't determined by the player's arm strength, but by the accurate data described by equipment and skills. As long as they tried, it wasn't difficult to shoot this kind of pattern. And as long as they tried it, it would be extremely accurate every time because the range was fixed. At this moment, the arrows fell into the ditch like locusts. Gu Fei and Slim Waist Dance covered their heads and fled. Although it was just a simple ordinary attack, with such a grand display, if a few arrows were to hit him, he would definitely lose his life. I'll cover you. Blast them. Slim Waist Dance shouted. She was about to jump out of the ditch when Gu Fei grabbed her. Are you kidding? There are too many archers. Then what do we do? Switch directions. Gu Fei replied as he dragged his slender waist and continued to move forward in the trench. He brandished his sword and shot down the arrows that were falling from above his head. The arrows fell freely, but they weren't very fast. The ditch seemed to be a great help to the two of them. After a turn, they circled to the side of the archers. Those people were still shooting forward. Gu Fei let out a sigh of relief. This is it. The two of them nodded and jumped out of the ditch. However, the range of the spell was relatively short. If Gu Fei wanted to cast it, he would have to get closer. The two of them ran forward, but the archers in the 4Cs formation noticed them. Time Reflected didn't panic. He waved his hand with a smile. Type B. The archers in the formation seemed to switch positions in a mess, but in an instant everyone's arrows were aimed at Gu Fei and Slender Waist Dance, who were rushing over from the flank. The two of them were stunned. Then, they heard time-reflected yell, "Shoot!" More than 100 arrows flew over like locusts. This time, they didn't move in a parabola. Instead, they pounced straight at the two of them. Moreover, the target of the arrows wasn't the two of them, but an area. As a result, the two of them had no space to dodge. No matter where they went, they would be hit by the arrows. The two of them could only hope to fly back to the ditch before the arrows reached them. They were only a few steps away from the ditch, but no matter how fast they were, how could they be faster than the arrows? Maybe Slim Waist Dance could just barely make it into the ditch, but Gu Fei would be a step slower. Just as he was about to cry, Slim Waist Dance didn't rely on her speed to rush out first. Instead, she went behind Gu Fei and pushed him. This way, not only did Gu Fei become a little faster, but Slim Waist Dance also helped him block the arrows that might hit him. The moment the two of them fell into the ditch, more than 100 arrows flew over their heads like a gust of wind. Slim Waist Dance had several arrows stuck in her back, but she was still alive. She was panting and touching her bread. "We can't get through." Slim Waist Dance sighed as she chewed on her bread. "Yeah." Gu Fei sighed. Against this kind of formation, no matter how fast you are, it's useless unless you can teleport. Teleport? Slim Waist Dance was stunned. "You're level 40? Gu Fei nodded. "You've entered the lightning class?" Gu Fei nodded again. So, Slim Waist Dance touched her pocket. "Can you use this?" Gu Fei took it and looked at it. Eternal skill scroll, teleport. Chapter 189. Why do you have everything? Gu Fei was dumbfounded. Slender Waist Dance pouted and said, "It's all because of this stupid game company. They didn't explain anything clearly. I thought I could use the skill scrolls to create a unique skill tree. Who knew that they would only tell me that I needed lightning mana when I needed to use it?" In the mouths of the players, the game company would never get the better of them. Gu Fei nodded and asked, "Then how many more scrolls did you get?" "I was tricked. One wasn't enough. How many more do you want me to get?" Slender Waist Dance hit Gu Fei. "I only got one, and it just had to be teleportation. I think you're my lucky star, right?" As Gu Fei said this, he slapped the scroll with both hands. A stream of light appeared between his fingers and seeped into Gu Fei's body. The system shouted at the side, giving him new mana. Just like that, the teleportation skill was learned by Gu Fei. "You used it?" This time, it was Slender Waist Dance who was stunned. "Yeah." Gu Fei replied as he opened the skill tree to look at the description. Uses powerful mana to distort space, allowing the caster to instantly appear where they want to appear. Killing intent. Seeing this, Gu Fei was suddenly shocked. He felt a biting cold killing intent right in front of him. He turned his head and saw Slender Waist Dance glaring at him like a tiger watching its prey. It looked like she wanted to strangle Gu Fei to death. "What's wrong?" Gu Fei hurriedly asked. "Who told you to use it? Who told you to use it?" Slender Waist Dance roared. "Then why did you give it to me?" Gu Fei was startled. "I just wanted to show you," Slender Waist Dance said. "There's no point in keeping it," Gu Fei said. "Sell it for money. This is money," Slender Waist Dance yelled. "Why don't you just sell it to me?" Gu Fei said. Slender Waist Dance immediately extended her hand, 2,000 gold coins. "So expensive." Gu Fei stuck out his tongue. "I received 1,800 gold coins and only earned 200 gold coins from you." Slim Waist Dancer's business was extremely transparent. Gu Fei didn't mind. He just nodded and went to dig into his pocket. He quickly took out a bag of money, opened it, and casually counted it before handing it to Dance. Slender Waist Dance was surprised that it went so smoothly. She took it and muttered, "I couldn't tell that you're also a rich person." In the end, Gu Fei smiled and said, "That's 200 gold coins. I'll let you make a profit first. As for your costs, I'll have to pay in installments. I don't have that much money." Slender Waist Dance flipped through the money pouch and counted. Sure enough, there were only 200 gold coins. Gritting his teeth, he could only accept it for now. As for whether Gu Fei would settle the remaining 1,800 gold coins, that would depend on Gu Fei's character. I'll suddenly appear in their midst and catch them off guard. Cover me. Gu Fei adjusted his equipment. At this time, the rain of arrows from the Four Seas arrow formation was still falling, but it wasn't much of a threat to these two experts with quick reactions. Slender Waist Dancer was full of life after eating the bread, and the two suddenly jumped out of the trench. Teleport move. Gu Fei jumped out of the trench and began chanting as soon as he stood firm. Although it wasn't an offensive spell, it was used in exactly the same way. The direction Gu Fei was pointing at was exactly where he wanted to move, the center of the Four Seas arrow formation. Slender Waist Dancer flashed in front of Gu Fei and used her body and dagger to block the opponent's oncoming attack. Gu Fei successfully chanted, and the space he was in suddenly distorted. If thieves used stealth and vanish to slowly make people blurry and transparent, then teleport would violently tear people apart in an instant. To the bystanders, Gu Fei was like a piece of glass that shattered in an instant. At the same time, the same distortion occurred in another location. Compared to Gu Fei's vanish, this was like rewinding. The space suddenly distorted into fragments, and then the fragments reassembled, and a lively Gu Fei reappeared in front of everyone. Teleport was indeed instantaneous, so instantaneous that Gu Fei didn't notice it at all. The sudden blur in front of him was mainly because the scenery had changed. He looked back in surprise, and Slender Waist Dancer's cover was still in place. However, what was worse was that Gu Fei's teleport actually didn't reach the position he pointed at. Gu Fei only moved from behind Slender Waist Dancer to a place about 5 meters in front of her. It was a long way from where Gu Fei's finger was pointing. Why did you move there? Slender Waist Dancer was flustered and exasperated. I don't know. Gu Fei was also very confused. He was sure that his finger didn't make a mistake, so why did the position only move by a little? The skill description of teleport didn't mention the specific distance, only that the distance moved was proportional to the mana consumed. Gu Fei checked his mana at this time and found that only a little bit had been used. Obviously, it couldn't have been because of a lack of mana. Before he could figure this out, the opponent's second wave of attack had already arrived. The target of this attack was locked onto Gu Fei, who was closer to them. The 5 meters that Gu Fei suddenly approached the opponent had a very serious effect. It was this 5 meters that allowed him to enter the range of the archers in the first half of the opponent's arrow formation, homing arrows. The reflection of time had been directing the arrow formation to shoot while moving toward the trench. He wanted the trench to enter the attack range of the homing arrows. That way, when the opponent showed himself again, he could be eliminated with certainty. At this time, Gu Fei suddenly entered the attack range, and the prepared archers immediately used the homing arrows without hesitation. Dozens of arrows flashed with white light, and after the sound of bowstrings, they rushed toward Gu Fei like dozens of meteors. There was no such thing as dodging the homing arrows. With Gu Fei's skills, although he could take down a few, it was impossible for him to take down dozens of them. Slender Waist Dance, who originally wanted to go forward to protect Gu Fei, saw the situation and knew that it would be difficult for Gu Fei to save him this time. She sighed and very nimbly flashed back to the trench. Gu Fei was also helpless. He tried his best to get close and cast spells, but it still ended in failure. Dozens of tracking arrows pierced into Gu Fei's body, killing him without any suspense. As soon as he was sent outside the guild building, Yutian Shenming chased after him. You just used teleport? Yutian Shenming was one of the members of the crisscrossing Four Seas arrow formation and one of the murderers who had just shot the homing arrows at Gu Fei. He clearly saw everything that happened in the battle. Yes, replied Gu Fei. Where did you get the scroll? Asked Yutian Shenming. I bought it from Slender Waist Dance, said Gu Fei. How much was it? 2,000 gold. You're really rich. Yutian Shenming exclaimed. I'll pay in installments. I've already paid 200 gold, said Gu Fei. Slender Waist Dance is so rich and the two of you are so close. Why do you still need money? Said Yutian Shenming. We're just normal friends. Besides, having money isn't a reason to give things to others for no reason. Gu Fei lectured Yutian Shenming. Yutian Shenming didn't care. How's slender waist dance? At the time, Gu Fei was busy being shot and didn't have time to look at slender waist dance's situation before he died. She very nimbly hid back in the trench, said Yutian Shenming. Hurry up and fight. When you're done, let's study this teleportation technique, said Gu Fei. Gu Fei was defeated in a moment of carelessness. Slender waist dance couldn't even handle a team of 20 or 30 people by herself, let alone raining the 4 C's arrow formation. There was no longer any suspense in the outcome. The reborn Amethyst girls scattered all over the map were found and killed by their opponents one by one. Raining the 4 C's easily won this round. The reborn Amethyst finally couldn't fool around any longer. With their strength, it had to be said that they were very lucky to be able to make it to this stage. The girls knew this very well. Moreover, most of them weren't that interested in PvP competitions like this. Most of them weren't too disappointed when they were eliminated. After exclaiming a few words outside the teleportation circle, they happily went about their own business. Slender Waist Dance was very busy in the competition. Now that she was eliminated from both the guild confrontation and the mercenary confrontation, she had nothing to do. She was the only girl who was a little disappointed. As for Gu Fei, he was also very disappointed that he had lost a reasonable opportunity to kill someone. It was rare for the two of them to sigh together for a while. That was until Yutian Shenming came out of raining the 4 C's 700-man formation and found the two of them at the foot of the wall. The moment he saw the beautiful Yutian Shenming, he immediately abandoned his enthusiasm to discuss spells with Gu Fei. He greeted Slender Waist Dance with a radiant smile, his eyes completely ignoring Gu Fei. It was a pity that Slender Waist Dance was not in a good mood at the moment, and Imperial God Ming was a member of the enemy camp just now. Since he was an archer, he was naturally a member of that extremely annoying arrow formation, so Slender Waist Dance was not in a good mood towards him. After casually greeting him, he sang a sad song and left. "Ah, your voice is so beautiful." Yutian Shenming sent her off with peach blossoms in his eyes. "Grapes?" Gu Fei called out. Yutian Shenming quickly turned around with a serious expression. However, when he looked around, there was no sign of grapes. Gu Fei sighed in his heart. Yutian Shenming was a typical guy who looked at the bowl and thought about the pot. Compared to Tsubasa Sakuratsuka's messy, the tallest tree in the forest theory, he was the more wretched one. When Yutian Shenming saw that there were no grapes, he knew that he had been tricked by Gu Fei. He was a little embarrassed, so he quickly took the initiative to talk to Gu Fei about teleportation spells. After listening to Gu Fei's story, Imperial Sky Divine Ming carefully asked Gu Fei about his posture at that time, the speed of his chanting, the direction of his gaze, whether his fingers were straight or not, a series of questions, and came up with close to 10 hypotheses. Just as Gu Fei was dumbfounded, he casually asked, "What do you think it is?" "I think it might be because it's a new spell. His proficiency is too low, so he couldn't move that far." Gu Fei felt ashamed of his lack of knowledge in the game. "Oh, that's probably one of the possibilities." Yutian Shenming felt even more ashamed than Gu Fei. You're tuning in to the Passion Pages YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.